I got it. Yep. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Crucible. This time, Crucible Limited, because YouTube hasn't been very kind to us, and of course, we've been mass flagged by every dickhead on planet Earth, essentially. But we do appreciate all of you guys coming out for this fine debate tonight between Zen Shapiro and Nikki from Beat the Cult. We expect this to run the standard time, roughly 3 hours with callers. I expect this will be a highly contentious debate. I think that people are going to enjoy it very much. I'm certainly going to enjoy it very much. Before we get into it, make sure that all we need right now, I think, to monetize the backup channel is like, I don't know, 1,500 watch hours or something. Maybe even get that out of this debate. I don't know. You're right. I don't know. But make sure you watch the contents on the Crucible. That way we can monetize this channel. If you want to send in a super chat tonight, use the Dono chat link. It's pinned at the top. Mods will also be kind of spamming the Dono link. That way we can take in super chats this evening. I got a feeling that there's going to be quite a few of those. And of course, we'll be taking in callers. So if you want to call in, when we get up to that section, mods will be giving you the link. You can hop into the Discord and you'll be vetted for call-ins as well. So we appreciate everybody coming out here tonight. So let's do the whole thing the right way here. And we already did the whole ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crucible and all that shit. But I wanted to play the intro anyway because it is the Crucible. So we'll be right back with both of our debaters. And we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, to my upper left, let me reconfigure everything here. There we go. My upper left, we have Nikki from Beat the Cult. She's been kind of a long-time debater here in the Crucible. We appreciate her coming back this fine evening. Nikki, why don't you take a second, shout out your channel, tell everybody where they can find you. And by the way, welcome back.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, guys. It's good to see you again. Thanks for having me back. You can find me on Twitter at Beat the Cult and my YouTube channel, Beat the Cult, as well.
All right. We appreciate that very much. And Zen Shapiro, co-host of the one and only Crucible. He even has his Crucible backdrop, right? He's debating on his home front for all of us Zen, no pressure though. Go ahead, take a second, shout yourself out, tell everybody any social media or Discord links you want them to go to.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you already did that for me, but yeah. I'm Zen Shapiro. I am the host of The Crucible alongside Andrew Wilson. You can find me on Twitter. I don't really tweet that much anymore, but I'm sure I'll be active at some point. I do have a YouTube channel that I don't use. It'll probably just become a backup for The Crucible at some point as well, in case we get mass flagged again. Who knows? But I am happy to be back in the debate seat. I haven't been here in a while. I've mostly been moderating recently, but I'm happy to be back. Like I said, make sure you guys show support for the channel tonight. We're in a rough spot. The strikes and the mass flagging, it really hurts the channel. We had to delete all our content. It hurts our algorithm. So please show your support through Dono Chat tonight so we can get the channel back up where it should be. So thanks for doing this, guys.
And everything, any of you who want to watch any of the previous debates that we've ever done, you find all that on our Rumble channel. All the VODs will be up on Rumble, but we appreciate you here with us live. Now, before we get started, a couple of things. I want to go over the topic tonight. The topic tonight is, what is it, Zen? On abortion, it's, hang on.
Is abortion a right?
Right, correct. Is abortion a right? Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure that we have that up to snuff. So, as you were the person who was the challenger in this, then you're going to be the person who opens, and then we'll let Nikki open afterwards. And we expect about an hour and a half back and forth. I expect both participants to adhere to my moderation. If it gets too contentious, I'll break you up. I don't mute people, but I do tend to tell them to shut the fuck up if they're way out of line. But I do expect that there's always a bit of contention. So I expect both participants to adhere to the moderation. Also, for all of you out there in chat land, make sure to use that Dono chat. If you want to send in a super chat, it is good for the channel. Tonight's goal is $200. You can see it above my head, and occasionally you might see me do something like this. Kind of put myself over where Nikki is with the with the Dono above my head, just so that you can see it better. I don't know. We're still fucking around with the graphics, but $200 is the Dono goal for the night. We appreciate everybody coming out this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to shut the hell up and we're going to get this debate started. Zen Shapiro, you've got 7 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
All right. So I do find this topic very interesting, the way that it's framed, at least. Is abortion a right? So those of you that know, I'm very big on the abortion topic. It's probably my main issue to debate, historically at least. So we're going to see a lot of the normal dialogue. Is this a human life at conception, or is it just a clump of cells being terminated early that doesn't really have any moral meaning or value, similar to a woman, passing a menstrual cycle, for example. So we're going to have to ask and answer these kind of questions. Obviously, on my view, I believe that it is a human life at conception, and essentially that claim is scientifically backed. It's supported by the overwhelming body of scientific and biological research. So even on Nikki's naturalistic paradigm, she's pretty much going to have to accept that. There's not really a way around that claim, because it pretty much meets all the scientific criteria for what a life is and what a human is at the moment of conception. But I'm sure we'll have disagreement and dialogue about that. It really depends on where Nikki wants to take that. But if we can't establish that it is in fact human life at conception, then it follows logically that abortion is the killing of a human life. And now we are asking, is an abortion the unjustified killing of an innocent human being? Is that what an abortion is? And if so, that would be murder. Obviously, that's what I think it is as a pro-lifer. So if, again, we're going to have disagreement, I'm sure, but if we do establish, in fact, that it is murder, then we're asking ourselves, is murder a right? Which I think, just intuitively speaking, the answer should be no. But if it is yes, then you really need to call into question your standard of ethics and rights, even as a naturalist, as an atheist. I don't think anybody really has that code of ethics in good faith, at least. So those are the normative issues that we're gonna have to iron out one way or another. But like I said, I'm interested in the framing because there's somewhere that we can go regarding rights. Is abortion a right? Well, that calls into question the very paradigm that rights exist within. I would ask Nikki, what is a right? What are rights on your view? Are they immaterial? Are they material? Are they universal? Are they empirically justified? Is there a grounding for said rights that you would be appealing to if you claim that abortion is a right? Regardless of what the answer is, I think you're also going to have to accept that rights are only rights insofar as we have duties to uphold and preserve them as a people, both for ourselves and for others. But if we're gonna, like I said, I think you kind of have to accept that if you don't accept that we have a duty to uphold rights, then rights don't really mean anything because there's nothing to protect them or preserve them. But if you do agree to that, which I think you kind of have to, then duties to uphold something, that implies an obligation, that implies an ought, that entails ethics and morality. But on Nikki's view, as an atheistic naturalist, then morality is subjective. If that's the case, then your duty to uphold the rights is also subjective. Then the rights are subjective. So they don't mean anything either. Now, if you hold to that and you claim that abortion is a right, and I have a subjective or arbitrary duty to uphold and protect this right, but that's an arbitrary claim, then I can just throw it back at you and say banning abortion is a right. And you have an arbitrary duty to uphold and protect that. And I have an arbitrary right to exist in a society where there is no abortion. But if we're both speaking arbitrarily and we don't have, a concrete universal grounding for our ought claims that would support our rights, then we don't have any way to resolve this disagreement. We're not using rights in any meaningful way in society. There's no way to actually implement that. But if we do have, objective, universal duties and oughts to protect and preserve rights, well, that sounds like God-given rights, and I would actually agree to that. That sounds good to me if we have rights insofar as we have universal obligations to protect and preserve them. But as far as I'm aware, Nikki doesn't accept that. So Nikki doesn't really have a universal grounding for rights at all. She doesn't have a grounding to use the word rights in her worldview. So to sum it up, essentially, like I said, we're going to do the runaround. Is this a human life at conception? Is it not? Is it murder? Is it just a clump of cells? All that. Obviously, I claim that it is a human life, and to abort it is murder. And no, there is no right to commit murder. So abortion is not a right. And also, Nikki doesn't have a basis for rights at all in her worldview. So that is where I will end my opening statement.
All right. Appreciate that very much. Nikki, I'm going to give you the same exact thing. 7 minutes on the clock. You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thanks, guys. So is abortion a right? Yes, it is. Obviously, I'm arguing that position. A right is a natural privilege given to human based on other humans and the understanding of what should be allowed based on our activities and what we do day to day. The right to health, the right to freedom to make our own decisions, and in this case, the right for a woman to make her own decisions about her body. When a woman is pregnant, that is her child that she is carrying in her womb. And as traditional as it sounds, and as cliche as it sounds, nobody really has the right to tell a woman what to do with the life inside of her womb. Now, there are some caveats to that, as I'm sure Zen will probably be surprised that I do agree that life does begin at conception. I'm not even sure when else it could, but that's a biological definition. Of course, there's biological and philosophical definitions of life, or exactly how we would define personhood, etc. But I'm just going to go ahead and agree that, yeah, biologically life does begin in conception, but that life is within the womb of a woman who can decide or decide not to bring that life to fruition. And that is her choice. So with that being said, I don't really feel like it's even appropriate to be trying to tell another woman or another person what to do with the life growing inside of them. Of course, I do believe there should be limits as to when that life should be terminated based on whether or not that life could possibly survive outside of her. And that is with the assistance of others. Of course, we all need others to survive, some more than others. But it's really not that complicated to me. Of course, if it was that simple, we wouldn't be discussing this today. But it's her body, it's her child. And for those who assume that they have the right to tell this woman what to do with her body, I just ask them, are you the one who's going to be paying for that child's formula, their diapers, taking them to soccer practice, staying up with them when they're sick, cleaning up their shitty diapers? Or are you going to be the one who's keeping them calm when they're at night, or like they have a nightmare at night? Are you going to be the one who is worrying about them when they're at school? I mean, if the answer to those questions are no, then you don't have a right or a say in what this woman does with the life in her womb. Of course, there is a caveat, as we'll get into later, as to what point she should be able to terminate the pregnancy with the life of the baby being terminated as well. But yes, I'm sure we'll get into the presuppositionalist stuff. I've never, debated that with Zen, but I've heard his debates before. Pretty standard. But yeah, I mean, appreciate you guys having me on the platform. Let's get to it.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Before we go into the back and forth between our two debaters, just so you guys know, we will have both of their links down in the description post-debate. Nikki, make sure that you get those over to me, and I'll make sure to put in whatever you want. The reason that we don't pre-put in links anymore is because people's links constantly change. Sometimes their link trees get deleted, or sometimes they get a different channel, and we end up putting up the wrong information. But before we go anywhere else with any of this, just so you understand where we're at right now. 1 second here. We are at already our goal, $228 already,
go.
right? 114% of our goal right at
you got to double it now. You got to double the goal.
And I just want to let you know, Anonymous, who sent in $200, said, Christ is risen. Glory to God for all things. Truly, he's risen, brother. $20 came in from Philip H. No message entered by user, just supporting the channel. We appreciate it very much, guys. It's very helpful to us. And now we're going to kind of get back into the back and forth here. Guys, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay. So cool. I mean, I guess I'll just let you take it where you want. I don't know that I heard your concise argument. So you agree that it's a life at conception, but you still believe that abortion is a right. Why again?
Sure. Biologically, yeah, because it's not anyone else's child. It's hers. And if she doesn't feel that she's prepared or equipped to raise a baby at that point in her life, she shouldn't have to do that. And for those who want to have input,
if it's born already, could she say that same thing?
No, I'm talking about in the womb specifically.
Okay, so yeah, like why does it matter if it's in the womb or outside the womb?
Well, because as I prefaced in the intro, there's a caveat, at least in my perspective, that if a child is able to survive outside of the mother, and that is with the assistance of others, obviously it's a premature baby, somewhere between 20 and 26 weeks, that if she wants to terminate the pregnancy, that she should be able to do that without killing the baby or ending the baby's life. But prior to that, since the child is not able to survive without her, it is her right to terminate that pregnancy at the expense of that baby's life, if that's what she chooses to do. But outside of that window, and then of course, definitely not when the baby's born, ideally. But some people would unfortunately probably do that.
So you're making like a bodily autonomy and a viability argument. You're saying that the mother has her own bodily autonomy insofar as the baby is not viable outside the womb, right?
She does have her bodily autonomy, but that's not necessarily the best way to go, of course, because the baby's got their bodily autonomy, of course, not necessarily because they're dependent on the mom to survive. Then you can kind of extrapolate that out towards you need a nurse to give them formula.
It's still dependent on somebody else's resources, even after it's born, for many years.
Exactly.
Like a teenager, even.
Hell, we all are, right? Right.
So
and that's right.
So like a 2-month-old that's like wholly dependent on another person to preserve it. Can we kill that? Why not?
No, absolutely not. Well, because that baby can survive outside of the mother's womb with the assistance of others. I'm not negating that we don't need others to survive. Not even you or I need others to survive. I'm not negating that the baby doesn't need a higher level of care. My issue would be with abortion is that when women decide they don't want to have the child, they wait until the baby is able to survive without them and then kill it. I have a problem with that. So what I'm trying to say is I do admit that the baby's going to need a high level of care, But prior to that, it is her strict decision whether or not she wants to gestate that child to that
But the
level.
baby
And if she
still can't
decides not to,
survive without the mother's care, even after it's born, or
no, it
somebody else's
can.
care. Okay, so
I agree.
whoever it is that is taking care of the baby after it's born, could they then kill it because the baby's reliant on them, even if it's not the mother?
No,
Why
absolutely
not?
not.
Why
Well,
not?
because the goal would be hopefully to assist, as you and I would do, I believe, in helping that person find the help that they need. Because that doesn't just apply to babies. That's why
You
we
can say
have
the same thing
other
about a baby in the
programs.
womb.
Well, that's my point, is that there's a position or a time when it's strictly the mother's decision, right? Because it's just her ability to take care of that baby and nurture it. Once the baby gets to a point where she can share that burden with other people, she should be willing to do that. And then I believe that
And if
we as a
those people
society
all
should do that.
whoever it doesn't this is like it doesn't change the principle. Like whoever it is that is taking care of her, the baby, or whoever it is that's taking care of the baby is wholly dependent on for some set
That's
period
fine.
of time, right?
We're talking about
So
abortion, though. We're not talking about a
right,
baby that's
right. I
already
understand,
born.
but I'm trying to gauge your logic here and see if it
Yeah,
is consistent even outside the womb. You're saying that if the baby is wholly dependent on the mother in the womb, then she can kill it.
sure.
But if the
Up
baby
to
is
a
wholly
certain
dependent
point.
on, but if the baby is wholly dependent on the mother or somebody else or some group of people outside the womb, then shouldn't they still be allowed to kill it?
It's not their child. So the point I'm trying to make is also the importance of the relationship of the mother to the baby. And one thing that I've kind of noticed with these debates, but not just with yours, no offense to you, but Destiny's and others that are predominantly male dominated, is that there's not a lot of consideration for the person carrying the baby. She's carrying this child. It is sitting on her bladder. It has its foot in her ribs. It's like she's the one, who is going through all these physiological changes, but it's like what she wants is not being considered. It's her child. If she decides
What
that she
about the
does not
consideration
want to
of the
bring that
baby in the
baby,
womb, though?
that
Like
baby is
the
dependent.
baby, you said the baby's sitting on the mother's bladder and has his foot in her ribs, but that's not
Sure.
even by the baby's choice. The baby's just existing, doing
Well, that's
literally nothing wrong at
unfortunate.
all.
But
So why
the
are we
baby is
killing it?
subject. Well, the baby is subject to. Well, that depends on the mother. There are a lot of women who are not ready to have children should not have to be forced to do that if they're not prepared. If they don't believe that they're equipped to have a child, I don't think we should force them to do that. I know ideally in this utopia that every single person who gets pregnant wants that baby and is prepared and has the financial and fiscal ability to take care of it. But that's not always the case. And we need to respect her choice if that's what she wants to do or
So let me
doesn't
ask you
want to
this.
do.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so you're saying that there's like this window of viability of 20 to 26 weeks.
When the
Let's
baby,
just
just a quick interjection. I also want to include the opinion of the doctor. She needs to be
sure.
intelligent in working with her doctor. So it would depend, but yes, you're right on that range. Sure.
So let's just say that, like, hypothetically, there's a pregnant woman out in the woods somewhere where she doesn't actually have access to like high quality healthcare, and she's 30
This
weeks
happens
pregnant.
a lot. It's
Right. Let's
unfortunate.
say she's 30 or 32 weeks pregnant. So she's past your window. The baby's like 8 months gestation or whatever. But
Yeah.
there's no way to perform an early delivery or an induction or whatever.
Mhm.
So technically
Sure.
speaking, the baby would not be viable. It's wholly dependent on the mother. Would then a 32-week abortion be justified on your view?
So when I say viable, I mean, and this, since we're doing hypotheticals, which will or will not or can or cannot be actually realistic. In my ideal, the woman, the baby, or her inability to care for the baby past the baby's viability time frame shouldn't matter. I mean, hell, she could give birth and a pack of wolves come by and nurse the baby. My ideal would be that she would not terminate the pregnancy and that she shouldn't do that. But you bring
But
up
the baby's not
an interesting
viable
point. No, it
by your
is.
definition.
By my
No, it's not,
definition,
because
is
there's no way
according
to
to
get
the
it out.
week, the time. No,
What's that?
she can birth it. I mean, she can have
No, I
give birth
told
to
you,
a
like, in
premature
this, like, let's
child.
just say it's like some, homesteader in Montana where they don't have like immediate access to,
Or a tribe or a hunter-gatherer tribe in
sure,
Africa. Because they
sure,
do that. They will
perfect.
still, they'll kill twins. Yeah.
Even
They
better
will.
example. Yeah, even
Sure.
better example. So,
Yeah.
they don't have access to immediate high quality health care, and
Sure.
there's no way to remove the baby other than, I guess, they could, do barbaric practices like,
Yeah.
the
That would
coat
suck.
hanger, for example,
Yeah.
or stab the
That's
woman in
not.
the belly, things like that.
Let's not do
would
that,
that be
right?
justified if the woman's like, never mind, I don't want this baby, and there's no way to get it out except for to kill it? Like, would that be okay?
I don't know. And here's why I say I don't know. For me, preferentially, no, I wouldn't do that, but that's not an argument. But I would hope not. But, and this kind of goes back to my point.
I'm
We
talking
don't know
about
what
on your
these
view of ethics, though.
on my view of ethics, I don't know. And here's why, because I want to go back to my original point, which is a big part of my view of ethics, is what that woman is dealing with, what her and her partner are dealing with is really none of our business and has nothing to do with us. I don't know the unique specifics of her situation in the middle of
That's a
the
cop-out answer,
African. Actually, no, it's an honest one because
It is,
I
because
would
you
like
wouldn't say
to
that. You wouldn't say that out.
I
if
would
it-
like
if she-
to have an answer, but I don't
Zen,
know
hang on.
what.
Let her finish her point. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I can understand why you feel that way. But it's actually not that. I actually tried to tie that in my intro or my opening statement. Is that it really is her choice because we don't know and we can't really give reasons.
Again,
we
that's
can
a cop-out
speculate.
answer.
Okay, I
Because, and
disagree.
I'll tell you
we
why
don't
it's a
know.
cop-out, because you wouldn't say that if it was like the killing of a baby, after it's born. You're like, well, we don't know what she was going through to make. No, we don't. It doesn't matter. She just killed a baby. Like it does. Like the reason for doing it, you can't just say it doesn't. Like, oh, we don't know her situation. Is it the case that she's killing an innocent human or not? And I'm saying she is, but so it wouldn't matter what the reasoning is behind that.
No, the reasoning is very important, and the reason, and that's another thing I'm trying to talk about. We don't know what life-threatening means to her. I know that we have these ideas in our head of what that could mean. Not arbitrary. Okay. I mean, it is until we have like a specific example, but in this case we don't, so I'll just let that.
So can I say that you're threatening my life right now by harming my mental well-being, and I might kill myself after the debate? For example, hypothetically in Minecraft, for TOS purposes.
Okay.
Could I say that? Would you take me seriously? No, you'd say no. You're.
I don't know. No,
it would be a ridiculous claim. It would be ridiculous.
It may not be. To be honest with you, it may not be. And here's why. I know people, and I at times do see a therapist when I'm going through a rough time, and sometimes they're like, you need to refrain from doing a lot of extreme activity or whatever. You need to stay calm because you're not mentally well, or you need to take time off. That is on me, but it could be possible that the person could be in a headspace to where their mental health may be threatened by the activity they're participating in.
Yeah, but
so it's very possible
to claim that, like,
I mean, just because it's not your fault,
life-threatening danger is arbitrary. Like, no, it's not.
I'm not saying it's arbitrary. I'm just saying in specific instances, it's not arbitrary, but we would need some specifics.
Sure. So,
but in that case, no.
Right. And in the case of a woman just saying like, oh, this is gonna ruin my life. I wanted to go to college and I want to get a job and do all these other things, go on vacation. That's not life threatening. That's convenience threatening. So that wouldn't be a justification.
It could be. It could be because of her mental health.
Then you could say the same thing about somebody outside the womb. You could say the same thing about parenting a 2-year-old. Oh, it's ruining my finances.
And here's the difference. But here's the difference, though. And this is where I go right back to my opening statement. The difference is, can we get help? That's the difference. Because if we cannot get help, then you have to make that decision strictly on your own. If you can get help, then it is your responsibility, because you are carrying a child that is innocent. It is your responsibility to go pursue help. And that's where the wet nurses and the doctors and your grandma and your mother-in-law and your whoever comes in.
That's why I gave the example of the woman who lives in rural Montana who doesn't have access to all those things and is a homesteader. It's just an example. Like some woman who lives in a rural area where there's not a lot of available health care or fast means of travel, who is pregnant late term, then their baby would technically not be viable even by your definition, because there's no way to remove and sustain it outside the womb.
No, that's not what I said.
How is that not true? Okay, let's define viability. What do you even mean by that?
When I say viability, I mean that the baby can survive outside of the mother with help. That's what I said.
And if you're in rural Montana and you don't have that help, then the baby wouldn't be viable, even at 35 weeks, right?
So since we're going to these wild hypotheticals, let's do it. You're
It
telling me
doesn't
this
have.
woman lives
It's
in rural Montana? Where's the? I mean, is she like Mary from the Bible? Who got her pregnant? I mean, she's
no.
not out
It
there by
doesn't. That
herself.
doesn't matter. It's just if there is
It
a
does
woman who
matter
lives.
because in this hypothetical, there's nobody there to help her. So
That's what
if
I'm
that's what
saying.
we're going with,
She just
but
doesn't
that's
have
not.
access to immediate health care to do an early delivery and sustain it in the NICU. Okay, she's living on a homestead ranch and doesn't. Let's say she's Amish and doesn't believe in that kind of crap. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is
So
that her baby, by your definition, would not be viable. And
no, the
even at
baby
like
is still
36
viable,
no, it's
even
not.
if she doesn't think it is.
The only reason you could say that a baby is viable at 20 to 26 weeks is if you do an early delivery and keep it in the NICU. But if you don't have access to the medical technology to do an early delivery and keep it in the NICU, then it's not going to be viable. So even at 36 weeks, it wouldn't be viable on your definition. So we could kill a 36-week gestation fetus, right?
You can, but I wouldn't want you to do it.
But you would morally support that, right?
No, I wouldn't morally support that.
Why not? It's not viable, even by your definition.
That doesn't mean I morally support it. We're talking about rights here. We're not talking about whether or not Nicole likes it. If we're talking about it is her right, because that was the debate topic, not does Nikki or Nicole, does she like this? Is it her right to have an abortion? Yeah, it's still her right. I don't like it. You don't like it, but it's still her right. And that's why I put remember in my intro, I said there is a caveat. It's still her right, but preferentially between this, period with assistance from our God-given, I guess, abilities to prolong life. But yeah, I mean, it's still her right, though.
So you would say that it would be a woman's right to kill a 9-month gestation fetus just because she can't preserve it in the NICU and deliver it early. So 8.5 months into the pregnancy, she's like, actually, never mind. Yeah. I don't want this for XYZ reason. And then she kills
her right.
it.
It's her right. I mean, it's her right. I mean, that's the topic. It's her right, and I know that a lot of people don't agree.
Born, then? What if it's not viable without the assistance of the NICU after it's born? Could she then kill it too? There, 5 minutes after birth?
No.
No.
And
why not?
No, and I'm so.
Well, let me caveat it.
No, I have some. No. I've thought of this
born, but it's still, How about this? It's born, but it's still connected by the umbilical cord, so it's still using the mother's body.
This is you, and who was this?
Could she then kill it before cutting the umbilical cord, even though it's been born already?
No, and here's why. So despite the NICU, because we were talking about technology at that point, we now have a baby that's fully gestated. That is now a person. And in my opinion, if the baby can be taken, I guess personhood is assigned when somebody is completely outside of the mother, and preferably before that, but just for a clear delineation when it's outside of the mother. But the point of the matter is that I'm talking about abortion. When the baby gets outside of the mom, that's murder. We're talking about abortion. An abortion is the killing of a baby or a fetus that's still inside of the mom. So that's the specific topic. Is abortion a right? Yes, the abortion is a right. What happens to that child?
What about a partial birth abortion? Let's so that we can walk through this slowly. Let's just say that only the head is out. It's not completely outside the body yet. Is that still a right to abort that?
No, and I'm not. And I want to make sure that I'm clear, and that we're talking about abortion as far as if the child is still within the mom. A partial birth abortion. So you'll have to forgive me, and despite the extensive research I've done on this topic, I definitely for sure don't agree with that. Her, as far as it's concerned, grounds? As far as her. Oh, well, I mean, remember, morally, I just don't think if a child can survive outside the mother that you should kill it. So I just don't like that concept. And this is, I'm more of a conversationalist, less of a debater. So sorry, guys, if you wanted a blood sport, but, and also because this is Zen's, kind of his
I
his
mean,
forte. I'm interested in.
it's been pretty blood sporty. I'm not gonna lie. So
Really?
it's
Okay.
yeah, it's been pretty blood sporty. So
Oh.
you're all good there. Sometimes
Oh.
conversation can be more brutal than formal debates, even. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Well, I
I'm
was
just
just wanted
confused. So you said that it's
to chat with him on that. But
essentially
we're talking about an abortion. Go ahead.
what you said essentially was what distinguishes, the simple justified abortion versus, unjust murder would be being completely outside the womb. So I asked you, what if it's only partially outside the womb? Would it then be okay to abort?
If we're in the process of giving birth, no. If
Why
the
not?
baby's
It's only
full,
partially
if
in the
the
womb.
baby, if the baby is fully grown and ready to roll, and we're pushing that thing out, and you're in the hospital and everyone's screaming at you, no, we're not doing that. And this is why, because if that's where we are, then we can get help. We can do something to make it easier for the mother and the child. And I would say no, that's where the right ends. But prior to that, yes, she does have that right.
Yeah,
but I guess I don't
hang on, he's
understand.
gonna
Oh,
show.
go ahead.
Hang on, he wants to show.
Oh, I see. Nice.
Oh, okay. I guess we can just keep going. Okay, but so to respond to that, it's like when you say, "Oh, we can get help. We're in the hospital." This is why I'm bringing up the
Sure.
hypothetical of the woman in the home on the homestead ranch who doesn't have
No.
access. To
The answer is no. Zen.
Okay,
The answer
then
is no.
you're gonna have to explain why, because on your
I already
view,
told you why.
well,
It's
okay,
because once
no,
that
you- no,
baby
you
is
don't.
outside of her, or once that baby is in the process of being birthed, let me specify, because I have to be careful with my language. Once that baby is in the process of being birthed, that baby can now survive outside of her with, or I mean, let's hope the baby can get some help, but maybe there's not. But no, she does not have a right to kill that baby when that baby's in the process of being born fully grown. Just not.
Okay.
And that's
But
it.
just to be clear, 5 minutes before the process of birth begins, it's okay, right? Or it is a right.
Before the process begins, let's go. So let's go to your hypothetical, and she's in the middle of the jungle, and all of the like Disney character animals are going crazy. Yes, it's her right. That is her right.
Or
But-
just in
but-
rural Montana where there's like no available
Sure.
hospital.
I mean, there's still
Yeah.
farm animals. There were still
Sure.
animals.
Yeah, but
with
it
Mary
doesn't
and-
actually sound. It doesn't have to be a crazy hypothetical. People do those kind of home births all the time. And I'm just
Yeah,
asking
it sucks.
if somebody decided in the middle of it, actually, I don't want this anymore.
In
stabs
the
it
middle of it, no. Like I said,
or in the middle of her contractions, right before she's about to give birth.
we got it. No, because at that point we're giving
you keep
birth
saying
and it's coming
but
out.
on your view, you should be saying yes.
I actually gave you a delineation. I said once we start giving birth and that full grown baby's
yeah,
on
and I
its way
said
out.
5 minutes
No,
beforehand, you'd be okay. With
but
that,
you
right?
you just recently said contractions. 5 minutes beforehand is not
I'm
contractions.
giving
5 minutes
examples of
beforehand.
like the process of birth. Like if you're having your contractions 5 minutes before deliveries is about.
Oh no.
Why not? I don't understand this.
I already told
contradicting
you.
your principles.
I don't know why. No, I'm not. I was very consistent. I said TQ
No.
because this child can survive outside of her. Now, hopefully we can get help. Maybe we cannot, but that's not it. After that baby is able to survive, when those contractions start and we're ready to go, she can't kill it. Before then, she has the right, but let's hope not. I'm really not sure how more specific I can be. I guess I'm not sure I understand why this is a problem. Why does it matter what this woman, like, let me just ask this question. Why does it matter to you? Because you have a family that you're worried about, and I do too, right? Like, not that, I'm not having any children, but like when my sister was pregnant, I cared about my nephew's well-being, and she could hear what I had to say, but I couldn't really like tell her what to do with the baby. Thankfully, she kept him. She's religious, but that's fine.
Okay,
but
what's
your
issue though? What's your issue?
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, why does it matter to you what another woman does with her child, like in her womb? Because it's her womb, right?
Well, because I'm telling you that I believe that that's a human life and that that's murder. So it's not that it matters. It's not that it matters insofar that it affects me. Like, somebody could get killed in Saudi. Somebody could get killed in Saudi Arabia, and that doesn't matter to me, as in it doesn't affect me. But it's still not a right, and it's not justified, and it's murder, and that's wrong. Like that's what I'm saying, and that we shouldn't allow that in our society.
So murder has a caveat of justification, right?
What's that?
Like murder has, in your definition and typical definition,
yeah, it's the unjust
murder has a caveat
of
justification,
right? Yeah.
So But her abortion or need for abortion is justified, though.
On what
So if it's
grounds?
just on her inability to care for the baby,
But
and
you
if
could
she has
say
the
but
inability
you
to
could
care
say
for
that
it, we're
about a
talking about
2-year-old outside the
abortion.
womb.
We're talking about abortion.
I
Is
know,
abortion a
I'm saying,
right?
I'm telling you, I understand we're talking about abortion, but you could say the same thing about a 2-year-old outside the womb, and you would say,
Mm-mm.
no, 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 that's wrong. So I'm asking for the
No, we can't.
concrete
I can't say
delineation.
that.
You could say,
I did. I
yes, you
told
could.
you.
Listen. You said
No,
her
you
reasoning.
can't say that. That's not the
Listen.
same thing.
You said her reasoning for the abortion is justified because she can't, quote, take care of the baby. That's what you said. But you could say the
Abortion.
same thing about a 2-year-old after it's already been born. If she realizes, oh, fuck, I can't take care of this thing anymore. She can't kill
No.
that. Obviously, you don't agree with that. So I'm looking
No,
for
that
your
would be
delineation.
murder. We're talking about abortion, which is inside
I
of the womb. I'm
understand
not
that.
going to make those two things are not the
Do
same.
you
So
really
I'm
not
going to keep
understand this
it.
analogy? Do you
No,
not
I do
understand the
completely.
concept?
I've heard it, and I'm prepared for this because you've used this repeatedly. But I want to make
Mhm.
sure there's a clear understanding of what abortion is, and we're talking about a baby inside the womb, and that's why I'm
I
asking you.
understand that, yeah.
Oh,
But
right.
like,
So I'm
listen, you have to
asking you.
extrapolate. You have to extrapolate logic sometimes outside of the scope of what you're talking about to then
I
bring it to
understand
reel it
that.
back into the topic. So I understand that abortion entails terminating a pregnancy, but my claim is
Right.
and you agree that that is a human life inside of the
Sure.
womb. So I'm
Get
wondering,
inside of the womb. Yes.
would these justifications for killing the human life in the womb also apply outside the womb? Just to see if the logic is
No.
consistent, and if not, you said no. I want to know what the delineation is. What
The
precisely is it that
delineation, like I said,
grants a human personhood just because it travels through the 7-inch birth canal? Why is that what gives a human personhood
the
or personal
delineation.
value?
Okay. The delineation, like I said, is that it is outside of the mother, and now there is a potential for help. The potential for help changes a whole lot of things. That's what I'm
Potential
trying
for
to
help.
specify.
Wait. Explain that.
Because
Explain
other
that.
people can. Wow, I did. Other people can contribute. Whereas the male and that's actually another reason people do decide to have abortions is the male is not supportive. It's very difficult to raise a child on your own. And then once again, let's go back to the woman. Why does it matter? And I'm not talking about a 2-year-old. Why does it matter to you specifically why somebody else has to keep a baby that they do not want or do not
I already
need?
answered this. It's not a question of does it matter. It's a question of, is this justified? Is this a right? Is this morally right or wrong? And I'm saying that it's wrong. But
So, but
hang on.
who are we to justify what she considers justifiable in her mind because
Well,
it's her body, her life?
that's a question of our, how do we ground our ethics? And but I think we're more speaking normatively here, which is where I want to keep it for now. We can go to the meta ethical stuff in a little
No, it's
bit,
not really
but
necessary.
well, we don't have to. It's up to, depends on where the
I mean,
conversation goes. But
it's not really necessary.
what you said is like, okay, I asked you, what is it that delineates the person just because it travels through the birth canal? Like, why does a human become a person just because it travels through the birth canal? You said because it's now outside the womb, but that's just repeating the claim.
No,
But
no,
then you
no.
said,
I said there was
hang on. Then you said,
Okay.
you did try to provide a distinction. You said, because then it has the potential for help. So others
Sure.
can help and others can do these kind of things. But
Sure.
I'll ask you this. What if there's nobody there to help? She's in a position where she doesn't have any help. Can she then kill the baby after it's born?
No.
Why not?
I'm trying to tell you that because there's the baby is now, it is a separate person, right? We have a separate person who, without being inside of the mother, it is now a separate person. So no, she cannot kill that baby. I'm not
asking you,
sure I
what is it that
understand
makes it a
necessarily
person?
why, because it is now independent of her body. Once it is independent of her body, it becomes a separate
What if it's
person.
still
It is
attached by
able
the
to
umbilical
form
cord?
thoughts. It is able to the umbilical cord is not going to continue to provide nutrients once the baby's outside of it. No. It doesn't matter because you can walk around with a baby attached to you for as long as you'd like. That doesn't mean that
It wouldn't be
that baby is
independent. It'd still be
still
receiving nutrients from the mother.
When my point is that no, it's not because the umbilical cord is going to wither.
I don't think you understand this. Like when you say independent, do you mean like
if you
receiving
listen to
nutrition and
me,
nutrients from the
allow
mother?
me to finish. Once the umbilical cord hits air, it starts to wither. So we've got to start moving at that point. We need to start seeing how that baby is going to get nutrition. That's my point. The umbilical cord can still be
It's not
attached.
independent
It's
till you
not
cut
serving
it,
its
right?
purpose. It's not independent until it comes out, really, because you don't have to cut it.
Also, until you cut the umbilical cord. Still not
No,
independent.
you don't have to cut it. The baby can stay attached, but it's going to continue to wither. It's not
But
going to,
okay,
that's not
so
how
this
it's
is
going to get
this
its
is the point, though.
nutrition.
This is the
That's not how it's
overarching
going to
point.
get its
That
nutrition.
regardless of all these like little like I am putting you in traps. I'll admit that, but and like asking gotcha questions. But regardless, when the baby comes out, and you could say it becomes independent of the mother simply because it's outside the womb, but it's always going to be in a state of dependence on somebody else, on some other
I
human being.
admit
So the question is,
I admit
can
that.
whoever that human is, whoever that baby is dependent on, can that person then kill the baby? Whoever it is.
They
It's
can, but
never
they
going to be in a
shouldn't.
state of independence. It's
Are you going to
always
ask,
gonna be
should they or can they?
well,
Because
do they
can
have a right? Do
somebody?
they have a right to? Because it's never going to be able to avoid being dependent on another person until it's like well into
No,
adulthood.
no, not at all. And that just kind of goes to, because we're talking about, this goes kind of into the other discussions about personhood and life and death and what constitutes these things and where those things begin and end. And a potential for life speaks a lot, right? Like we want to give this person, because it is a person, the opportunity now that they are alive to be supportive in our society, to sign a social contract proverbially with us, and to help build society as much as possible. So that's something that we need to consider as well.
Yeah, but you're not
And
answering the question. You're not answering the question.
oh, what did I miss? What did I
It's
miss?
still okay. So you're essentially your delineation here is you're saying like it's a person when it's born because it's no longer dependent on the mother, but it never escapes a
Not
state.
really.
Even if it's not the mother, it never escapes a state of dependency on somebody. Even if the mother
But
gives it up.
none of us do. None of us do.
Right.
And
So
like I said earlier,
that's clearly, you're not going to say that you're justified in killing somebody just because they're dependent on you, right? You can't kill a 5-year-old.
in the womb. Oh my goodness. In the womb.
What does the
And I know
womb
you're trying
matter?
to
That's what I'm
extrapolate
asking you. Why does the womb
because
actually matter?
in the womb, she is the one that the baby is attached to. In the womb, that's the only way the baby can get nutrition.
Are you gonna stand by the word attached? Are you gonna stand by that word attached?
No, because that's a bad word.
Okay,
No,
because
that's not a
don't
good
wanna
word.
do that.
Because no, I agree with you. Because of course the baby could she could drag the baby around on an umbilical cord until it withers and falls. That's not a good word. Fine. Fair.
Right. Okay.
But
So what does the womb
okay.
matter? Why does it matter that it's in the womb or not?
Because as I said previously, she's the only one that can provide the sustenance at that point. That's my point. But also too, we do need to talk about, like I said, the age of where that baby could possibly be viable outside of the womb, which is the 20 to 26 weeks. And that's why I said
we've already moved
previously.
past this.
It kind of goes back to it based on my response to your question. I was just trying to make sure I covered all my bases.
Yeah, but the overarching reason is because the state of dependence that the baby's on in the womb. You said
Sure.
These are your words. You said because it's only dependent on the mother at that point. Okay,
yes,
well even after it's born, it's only dependent on the mother or whoever's taking care of it at that point. So at that
No, that's not fair. It's not fair to say that when we can get help.
We can just keep doing the homesteader in Montana example,
but
where she
that doesn't
have
matter.
access to
I said
resources.
potential. I said potential.
Well, it has potential to be supported by others even when it's in the womb after it's born. And the reason I'm saying that is because even if it's outside the womb,
can you reiterate that?
hang on.
I didn't hear you. I wanted to make sure I understood you. Can you say that again?
So it still has potential to receive care from others in the womb. It just takes some set of time and some period of events to occur. And
I agree.
The reason I say that is because even outside the womb, if she's in, some location where she has to travel to go get help, well, there's some set period of time that has to elapse before others can intervene. But before that actually occurs, she should be able to, on your view, kill the baby that's already been born. Because at that point,
not already been born. No. Like I said, at that point, we're talking about when the baby, and like I said, I would actually think that personhood could be conferred before birth. I just wanted to try to give a little bit more of clear delineation. What did I say previously about the 20 to 26 weeks with the help of some type of doctor, ideally, then that's when we could start working on that. And
why not 27?
The longer she waits.
Why 20 to 26?
Actually, that would be ideal.
Why not 28?
Well, actually, I think going backwards would be kind of more.
Why not 19?
More support your
why
argument?
Not 19
because,
to 28?
Okay, let's move it more like it's 16 to 20. Because at that point, it's a lower chance that the baby would be able to survive outside of her without her. So we want to make sure that if she makes this choice, it's the least, like the least harm is done. And I hate to say that, but the ideal
Well, if you
would
want to
be,
reduce the most amount of harm, wouldn't you want to just not get an abortion then?
I agree, but guess what? It's still a right. I'm with you. Listen, I'm
All
with
right.
you. Like,
So,
and this
okay.
is the
Are we ready to
practicing
do
that.
this? Are we ready to start asking where rights come from and what grounds rights, or do you want to keep trying to defend this?
Oh,
I think
I'm
you're all
still
over
going to
the
defend
place.
her right. Oh, I
Well,
thought I was
I
consistent.
think you're all over the place on the
Help me
actual
understand.
delineation of when it becomes a person and when it doesn't. Like, I think you've been
No,
all over.
I think I was clear. Well, okay, so I think
When does it become a person?
So for me, I would say between 20 and 26 weeks, but that's just for me. I would
So
say
you're abandoning
definitively.
the birth.
I would say
birth part.
definitively. I would say definitively after birth or in the process of being born.
Okay, so just to be clear, definitively, abortion 5 minutes prior to birth
right.
is a justified human right.
Yes, it's her baby, it's her body. Yes, I don't like it, but it's her baby, it's her body, and I don't understand why. I honestly, it's shocking to me we've been having this conversation. Well,
what about the baby's body?
The baby is unfortunately in the midst of the Montana homestead in the winter, dependent on the mother, and if she can't do it, she can't do it. That sucks.
So we can just again, and then last time I'll do this before we move on.
Sure.
If we extend this out, this 5 minutes prior to birth, if we extend it out 5 minutes after birth, the baby is still dependent on the mother in the homestead at the homestead ranch in Montana, and they don't have any immediate access to any other help or resources. Could she then kill the baby even after it's been born? Because it's wholly dependent on her.
I already said no.
Well, then I think you're contradicting. You're just contradicting your principle then. So
okay, I was very clear, but I was clear after you informed me that you didn't understand.
Basically, what you're saying is like if a woman or if a baby is wholly dependent on the mother and she has no access to any other resources, then it would be justified to kill the human life. That's what we'll say, because that's what an abortion is, right? And now when I present the scenario of the baby who has been born and is wholly dependent on the mother with no access to any other resources, I ask you, is she justified in killing that? Is that a right? You say no. Well, then you're contradicting your principle.
I disagree, but okay.
Okay. Well, are you able to clear up that contradiction that I'm laying on you?
I tried to already. I guess I can try again. Okay. We have to work, because we're talking about abortion here. We have to be clear in that's where our actual conversation is. When we're talking about a baby living outside of the womb, when that baby is born and outside of the mother, it is a person. Now, we can debate on when to, put personhood on the child and all of that beforehand, but I'm just going to give that clear delineation. Mm-hmm. At that point, it does become murder if she tries to kill or kills that baby. And that's why we put people in jail for that. There is a reason why, when that child is inside of her, that she has the right to terminate the pregnancy. So I hope that's clear.
But you understand. Okay, let me just give an example. Like if we're talking about like, I don't know, systemic racism, and then somebody wants to bring up like slavery, that's not the same systemic racism that we're talking about today. That's something at a different time period, but it's along the same lines. So you would be justified in bringing that up. It's relevant. It would be relevant to the conversation one way or another. Can you
reiterate? Because racism always comes up for some reason. Can you reiterate why? Can you reiterate why you said that?
Because every time I bring up the killing of the baby outside the womb, you're like, no, we're only talking about abortion here. But it's like when you have debates and discussions about things, you sometimes and often actually extrapolate your logic out to other scenarios in other conditions that are not the same, not one-to-one, but they're similar. And that's why I responded. Racism of today versus slavery of the antebellum South, whatever. Like it's not the same thing, but it's similar, and it would be justified to bring up in a debate about that topic. So when we're talking about
that's fair. I already answered the question.
But but when we're talking about abortion, obviously that's the killing of the human in the womb. But it's fair to bring up the killing of a human outside the womb because it's along the same lines. It's relevant to the topic. So why do you keep rejecting it when I bring it up?
I haven't. I mean, I've rejected it because I thought it was kind of not that it's irrelevant, but
it's relevant. It's
relevant. No. I didn't say it wasn't. Maybe I'm not. Am I clear? I'm sorry. Okay. I want to make sure I'm clear because I said not irrelevant. I agree
Okay.
with you.
So then why are you rejecting my?
I'm not rejecting it. I responded to it several times.
Okay.
So I'm not rejecting it.
But I don't.
I
Okay,
responded.
I didn't hear a clear answer as far as like when I said the contradicting of when you contradict your principle on the when you say that it's justified to kill the baby or the human simply because it's wholly dependent on the mother with no access to any other option.
It's her body. It is her body.
Yeah,
So,
but it's still okay.
yes,
When
I feel
listen,
like we
when a
should.
baby's born and the mother's holding it in her arms and nursing it, or giving it a bottle or changing its diaper, she's using her body to preserve and protect the baby. So it's the same. There's no difference there.
But some mothers don't do that though, and that's unfortunately the risk. Like that skin-to-skin contact is it's imperative, but a lot of mothers don't do it. But
okay, that
like
doesn't matter.
Before,
That's not that doesn't matter. Hang on.
But like I said
you're saying that you're not addressing what I'm saying. Okay, so you're saying that it's okay.
How am I not addressing what you're saying?
Because you're saying that it's justified to kill the baby in the womb because it's using her body to be sustained, right? And I'm saying that even
but no one else can.
Womb,
I just want to clarify. Yes, but in her, and let's say homestead, like you said before, in her body, no one else can help at this point, right? It's just her.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So then, would that be okay?
Make sure that was clear.
Would that be okay?
I told you.
Even outside the womb?
No, I've already told you. I
don't know if you're just not tracking or
no, I'm tracking. I just don't know what you want me to say. Like it's not.
I want you to be consistent, or just admit that your principle doesn't follow through to its conclusion.
Oh no, my principle is perfectly fine. I just think
you want me to. I'm showing you why it's not. I'm showing you in real time why it's not consistent at all.
Okay, I'll go back and watch this and take some notes.
Okay, let's just walk through this very slowly. Okay.
Oh my God, I'm not doing this again.
I'm not playing games with you or anything. Let's just walk through this very slowly.
I know what you're doing, and I hear you.
The definitive line for personhood is birth, because that is when it is no longer dependent on the mother's body wholly and exclusively. Right? Is that your principle?
Say that. I was looking to try to see if I could get some feedback from comments, but I can't see comments. Okay. So I was distracted. Say that again.
Is it your position that personhood does not begin until birth because that is because up until birth, the baby is wholly dependent on the mother exclusively? Is that your position?
That's what I'm going to say and probably regret it later, but sure.
Okay. So now, and then when I think you are too. I think you're gonna have a bad time with
it. I am. But I have never debated this topic before. When I told Andrew, I was like, he's like, do you want to do something besides religion? I'm like, I'm super comfortable with that, but yeah, let me branch into this uncharted territory with the person.
So given that that's your principle, that it's okay to kill the baby, it's justified as a right to kill the baby because it's wholly dependent on the mother.
Sure.
In the womb, sure.
In the womb.
But and then
that's an important caveat.
But that's why I ask you, why does traveling through the birth canal matter? What is it that actually changes?
Because as I said before, we have a potential for help. And I know we're going to go to the hypothetical, but that's still, I mean, yes, she's in the homestead, but hey, who knows? Miracles happen all the time. So someone could come along. My point is the potential for help. And I've been trying to add that caveat purposefully because that plays a big role. So I hope that that's consistent.
That means that, okay, when you say potential for help, that means somebody can come along and help in the future, right? Is that all you mean by that?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
You could say that about the baby in the womb. You could say that about the baby in the womb at 12 weeks.
I know.
At conception, there's potential for somebody to help when the baby's born. There's just a series of events. There's a series of events in a span of time that have to elapse before then. That's all. I was
trying to be specific in giving that time frame of when the baby could survive outside of the womb. I'm trying to differentiate. I see what you're saying regarding the argument, but I'm trying to give a clear differential. But I can definitely see where you would see what I'm saying is confusing or not consistent. I'm definitely.
I just think it's a blatant contradiction. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I can see why you would feel that way.
Okay, and do you have an objection to that?
I do. I've said several times that there's I mean, it's just going to be the same thing I've said already. But
okay, well, that hasn't been satisfactory because I've shown you why.
I agree. I agree that you have not liked it.
So I guess this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull the Chad move and just declare victory on that point. But now I want to go to the, because you're not
Chad?
satisfying the conditions for this.
But that doesn't mean you
victory in this debate.
win.
But
okay,
I'm
sorry.
on. Let's move to this whole rights question, because I really do want to talk about this. What is a right?
Hang on, guys, hang on. Let's throttle it back for just a second, right? 1 second, so that I can shamelessly shill the Crucible right now before we get to the next part of this debate. And I do need to do a little shameless shilling. It's always good to do a little shameless shilling, and so I'm going to. Right now, we have moved the dono goal up to $400. We want to get rid of all of that gray, and right now we're at 258, 65% of the goal, and that's all due to you, the audience. Now, I'm going to let these guys get back into it and keep on tangling over this topic while I keep on making up bullshit polls in order to keep the chat occupied from everything except the very debate that they're supposed to be watching. Now, we're going to go ahead and move right back into this. And thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. It's already been a blast. This has been a very contentious debate. And now we're kind of moving into this next arena. And Zen, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, what I was going to say, I do want to talk to you about the whole rights thing, and that I mentioned in my openers. Essentially, what I want to know from you and your paradigm: what is a right?
So, first of all, well, before we move forward, I just want to get some clarification on your declaration of victory, even though I was very consistent and I already answered the question, and you have not given an explanation as to why it's not a right. You just didn't like what I said. So, Can you please explain how your disapproval simply means victory? Because I'm very curious about that.
Because it's not just me. It's not just me like declaring victory, therefore I win. I'm like showing you why it's a contradiction.
You're joking. I hear you.
I'm showing you why it's a contradiction, and you're just not accepting it. So I'm just like, all right, I guess I'll just declare victory.
No. Oh, you're being facetious. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I got you, Zen. You're cool.
So I just want to know what a right is. What do you think rights are?
Sure. So this is a really good question, and it's one of those kind of right. It's nebulous, although we don't want it to be, and we've had to specify, and I'm kind of hedging a bit because I definitely want to give you a good answer. So I would say a right, like a legal, ethical, let's see, it's like a right to social, like certain freedoms that people have, like the right to something that people cannot take away from you, for like, a right to bodily autonomy, a right to your possessions, to own land, to things like that. And some of those things, of course, there's differences between social, legal, ethical, etc. But because the abortion takes place within a woman's body and she has that right to bodily autonomy, then that is a right of hers to be able to abort that baby. So why would you feel that that's not a right of hers?
Well, I already explained that I think it's murder, and I don't believe murder's a right. But I want to really dive into like the meta of rights. Like what is, like, okay, when you say a right is like some freedom that you're granted or guaranteed or afforded, like whatever word you want to use there, would you agree that you only are afforded rights insofar as we have duties to protect and uphold those rights? Would you agree with that?
Right, insofar as we have duties. Can you reword that question? Because I think I understand what you're asking. I'm not sure I understand.
The only way we have rights is if people have an obligation or a duty to protect and preserve those rights. And what I mean by that is if you believe in a right to whatever, if nobody is protecting or preserving that, then the right doesn't mean anything. If nobody's abiding by it,
that's not true.
Okay.
A person can still have
rights if nobody's protecting or preserving them.
Well, for example, I mean, I hate to go to this answer, this hypothetical, but people always like to do this, and I think I know why. But there was a time in the past where I wouldn't have had rights as a Black woman. That doesn't mean that just because I didn't have them, I didn't deserve them, just because others wouldn't afford them to me. So thankfully, over time, people have fought for the recognition that people of color, and women especially, have rights, and they need to be upheld and recognized. But those were still there, even though people didn't want to recognize them. And that would be my point with the woman's body. Even if people don't want to recognize her right to her own body and the choice to do what she wants with her body and what's inside of it, she still has that right. So I hope that answers your question.
Not really, because I just wanted to like if
Okay.
like when we're talking about when we talk about rights, like are you using it like in the human rights context or just like government afforded rights?
Sure. I mean, those things kind of overlap, but usually when I think of rights, that's where I'm going with them because whatever rights the top individuals in society have are the same, like those human rights are the same human rights that those below should have. So if the people at the top who make the rules declare they have a right to their bodily autonomy, a right to love, happiness, and whatever else, then those at the bottom should also have those as well. But
Yeah,
I guess
but
I
again,
just
the
don't
question
know.
is if you believe in some right, or like we just set some right on the table, like the right to, I don't know, just be a woman. Let's just something simple, the right to be a woman
Right.
and live. If
Sure.
there's not a single person on earth that is actually preserving and upholding that right, then
Right.
is it a right?
Yes, that's what I said.
Okay, so where does it
Because
where does it come from?
there was
Where does it come from?
so unfortunately, we are human beings. We have these massive frontal lobes that give us this sense of awareness. And we have this ability to separate ourselves from our environment and understanding how we operate within our environment. And with that being said, we can understand what our needs are, like our basic needs are within our environment. And even without so I will say that there is, okay, hold that. There is just a comparison thing. I think to answer your question previously, I want to make sure I word this correctly. There is a comparison. I know what my rights should be based on looking at your rights. That doesn't mean, though, that I don't have those rights unless you affirm them. So back to what I was saying. I have this frontal lobe. I'm able to navigate my environment, but I'm still able to do that with your help. So yes, you can affirm my rights, but that doesn't, your lack of affirmation doesn't take that right away.
But I'm saying,
So
that's what I'm
maybe
asking.
that
If
didn't.
if nobody
Right.
is protecting,
No pun
preserving, or
intended.
upholding these rights, where do they come
Sure.
from? What are they grounded
Well,
in?
I can tell you one thing they don't come from, and that's a
fine. No,
myth.
you don't have to.
But
I'm not
I guess
pushing
it
for that.
could, but I know we're not to the myth part yet. I'm just bracing for it. But those come from, it's really interesting. Like we live in these big ass societies and we interact with each other in these really profound ways. And based on our interactions and what is needed to survive, that's kind of where these concepts of rights come from. For example, the rich, right? We live in a society with the rich and they want bodily autonomy and all of these things as well. Well, simply because I'm poor compared to the rich, yes. Why should I not expect that? So
Yeah, but if you
I
say
don't
you have a
know.
right to bodily autonomy and just nobody, literally nobody, upholds or respects that right, and then they infringe upon it, then it's not a right. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I don't agree with that because there was a time in the past where I did not have that right. There was a time I didn't have the right to vote. I didn't have the right to drink from the same water fountain as you or any of
So then
those things, but I still.
these rights are arbitrary. They change over time.
Unfortunately, they do, but the reason they change is because as we learn more about ourselves as human beings and what our rights should be, we're evolving. And I think that's positive.
You mean when you say what our rights should be? Are you
Sure.
speaking relatively there, or
I don't think so. Well,
you think there's a
that's an interesting
universal ought
question.
claim? Are you about to lay down a universal ought claim as to what rights we ought to have and ought respect and ought uphold? Are you going to do that?
I would say there are some, but before I would say there are some, and like I said earlier, I would hinge those on our understandings of who we are, our scientific understanding of what our frontal lobe does, how we interact with each other, and our transition from hunter-gatherer to agrarian society and what that kind of looks like.
Yeah,
So
but hang on. How are you going to justify a universal right from your atheistic paradigm?
So, first of all, being an atheist has nothing at all to do with the universe. It has to do with what we understand humans to be and how we respond. For example, just because I'm an atheist, that doesn't mean I don't understand that humans have two eyes and a nose and all of those things. Like those are things that you and I can both see. So that also translates to psychological and neurological tendencies as well. So that has nothing to do with it. But I mean, basically, but the point of the matter is that human beings, see, we do have rights to bodily autonomy.
That's just begging
we
the
have
question.
rights to make
that doesn't.
No, it's not. You asked me.
Right,
You
I'm
asked me a
questioning the
question.
very notion of rights on your view Okay, so you agree?
And I'm going to
rights,
ask you why.
are rights a physical object, or are they immaterial?
Obviously, they're immaterial, but they're based on physical
Right.
things, and those are the things
Are
that
they
I'm trying to
universal?
point towards. Some of them are, not all of them.
And how do you
And
ground
there's only
those
one I can
universal
think
rights?
of.
How do you ground a universal right in your worldview?
Well, I use the same thing that you do without the extra step.
God?
Allow me to, without the extra step. See, you gotta let me finish my sentences then. Without the extra step, we look at our environment, we look at how we fit into it, and I know we were going to get to this point, so let's just skip to the point. How do you know? Because now we're getting into where I'm comfortable, a lot more comfortable. So you say that you use God to ground the concept of rights. How do you? Okay, well, let me just ask you. How do you define rights?
Well, I was willing to grant you whatever your definition was, but essentially, I would just say a right is something that is guaranteed and afforded to you, that is inalienable, in that, but also insofar as we have a universal obligation to uphold it. And the only way I think you could have rights is if you are appealing to God-given rights, because you're going to have God-given obligations, which would be universal. I don't really appeal to rights very much when I make arguments or when I form conclusions about the world. I don't really do that. So that's why I was like, I'll just grant you whatever you think a right is, you know?
I mean, it's part of the topic. So, I mean, that's fair. And you, you don't, I've never heard you bring those up. But when you say God given, which God are you talking about?
The Christian God.
Oh, so there's like a universal Christian ideal when it comes to rights and other concepts?
Yeah, like I said, I don't really appeal to rights, at least not very often, when I'm debating, and specifically not in this context, like abortion or whatever.
But you wanted to ask me,
I think
sure.
Christian God would be a universal authority over like what we are obligated to uphold and preserve if we're talking about rights. But I think that involves duties. Like we have a duty to uphold the right to life, for example. You know, but you can only say that. That's what. Well, I think you can only say that if you're appealing to a universal authority as to what your duties are. And I think if you don't believe in God, you're not going to have a grounding for that. So you don't have to agree
see how that's
me.
possible.
You don't have to agree. Hang on.
Because
you don't have to agree real quick. You don't have to agree with me on like God-given rights. But if you are going to assert universal obligations to protect and preserve rights, then you're going to have to find a way to ground that without God. And I don't think you can do it.
And I think I already know. To be honest, I'm just honestly, how do you think you can ground it with God, or at least your particular preferred view? I just want to add. Well, you said you don't think you could, and I just wanted clarification on that. Like, why would you say that?
Like, you're saying, okay, repeat your question.
You said that you cannot ground universal rights without God, and I'm just trying to understand why you said that.
Because I mean, do you believe in universal like oughts? Do you believe in universal like standards of ethics?
Can you define ought in your
like ethics, morality? Do you believe that these things are absolute, universal?
There are some things. There are some things that are, not all things.
How would you ground a universal ought claim that you ought do X and that's a universal truth?
It would depend on what that is, but I definitely wouldn't come out and say point blank absolutely that without the belief in my specific God, there is no chance.
Why don't you just give me an example of a universal, you ought preserve this right? What would be an example?
You're see you Zen.
You maybe go get some whiskey.
I stopped. You know what? No, I stopped.
I think you're gonna need it for this. You're gonna need it for this.
No, not at all. No. I have my chamomile tea. That is what I told myself because I was like, no.
I need it for this though. But I mean, an Irishman always needs it, so it doesn't really matter what's going on. It doesn't really matter what's going on. We just always need whiskey. Usually, I just supplement it with beer while we're doing a show. But anyway, I'm kidding. I'm not an alcoholic. That would be ridiculous. That's impossible for an Irishman to be an alcoholic. But anyway, go ahead, guys. Floor is still open. I did want to interject just briefly by saying, go ahead, callers, and begin your stack up. We only got about 15 minutes left in this debate. We're going to be getting closing statements very soon. Go ahead, guys.
Okay. Well, can you give me an example of a universal ought claim that says you ought uphold this right to do whatever? You can fill in the blanks how you want. Can you give me an example?
I will do my best, but only because I'm hoping to get back to my question and get that answered as to why you feel that only a God, and specifically your God, is needed to make these claims, especially when there's really not a consensus amongst Christians as to what the God wants or how that God thinks or how we should behave. I would say we ought to respect each other's bodily autonomy. I would say, and to be honest with you, that's kind of and I think therefore I am response, like that's pretty much the basis, I feel. And I would say, because as a human being and how I know how that feels for someone to violate my bodily autonomy, I know that I ought not violate another's bodily autonomy.
Yeah, but you're just speaking
But
relatively. You're just saying this is a universal claim because I know I shouldn't do it. But like, what if somebody comes up and violates your bodily autonomy? Like, obviously they don't agree.
Well, they don't agree, but I know that you'd asked me about what you asked me about an ought, not what others would do in response to my
I'm asking for a
ought.
universal ought claim that says
I
you
just gave
ought
it
to
to
do
you.
this. As you
Sure.
Like as an objective truth, you ought preserve bodily autonomy. Is that what you think? And if somebody comes up and says, I disagree, and then violates your bodily autonomy, how do you resolve that?
Well, we would we do what we would do. What we typically, I'm sorry, I was moving my thing because my screen keeps going dark. Well, we have laws and other things to respond to that, but I doesn't really. So I just gave you a response, right? You may not like it. It may not be as airtight as, you know.
I don't think you gave a universal
God.
I think you gave a relative.
You asked me. Okay, so how about this? What is your example of a universal ought?
Well, if I were to say, like, if we're talking in the context of rights, even though I don't really operate in this paradigm, I think that's more like an enlightenment system. But if we're talking about rights, like, oh, you ought protect and preserve and acknowledge everyone's right to life, for example, because that's a God gives us life, and God gives us the duty. He orders us the duty essentially to protect and preserve others' life.
But what if people don't agree
that would
with
be an example, but yeah, I mean, obviously you're not going to agree.
Well, I mean, I agree with the end result, but I just don't agree with that premise. And I'm just kind of trying to figure out how you and I could come to the same. Actually, I think the question is how you and I are coming to the same conclusion, even though we both have different concepts of how we arrive there.
Well, I just
think that's where the value is.
Just because you and I come to the same conclusion doesn't mean that the conclusion is universally true. That doesn't follow. So,
but we can get. I agree, but my point is that we can start working towards conclusions and solutions as we typically do with each other. Even though
I'm trying to examine the premises that lead up to this. Like, again, you're not going to agree with this. I'm just simply saying, like, that, like, if we're going to make a universal claim to rights, then I think if I'm going to do that, I'm going to appeal to the Christian God. You're not doing that. I want to know what you're appealing.
Why on earth would I appeal to something that hasn't been demonstrated?
I understand that. That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
What are you appealing to?
I'm appealing to what we can garner from the scientific method based on what we understand about human behavior and how humans operate.
Science doesn't give you odds.
I know we do. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to work towards. No, science does not give us odds, but what we derive from scientific discovery can, based on our evaluation of it. And that's why I say
there's no.
Wait. Before you interject, one more
thing.
I'll
gotta wrap it up.
Okay, I'll grant you
we have
that answer. I'm not satisfied with the answer because I think all you did was appeal to science. But I want to give Nikki.
You appeal to God, Zen. You just like Christian God.
Real quick. I promise I'm being charitable. Andrew, I want to give Nikki her chance to ask the question that she wanted to before we get to opening or closing statement. Sorry. And then, yeah.
Which question? I thought you already asked. I already asked.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it this time, but you're fucking with my schedule. I don't like my schedule fucked with.
Did you already ask the question that you wanted to ask, or did you have another?
I did, yeah. And you said the Christian God. Then I said, well, how? And you said, well, you said science. And I said, well, you said the Christian God. So how, once again, do we get to a conclusion together to work together? But it's
okay. Well, I'm good then.
That's fair.
Wait, did you just make the demand? I just grant the demand, and then you're just like, no, it's fine.
Why don't you shut the fuck up,
The
Andrew?
fuck?
How about that?
Hey, you know what? Get into closing. We're getting into closing statements. Okay, so because you opened first, Zen, I'm going to give you the last word on this, and Nikki, you're going to be able to close first. I'm going to give you the same amount of time, which is 7 minutes. You'll have 7 minutes on the clock. Take your time. You always will have a little bit more time than you think. So go
Okay.
ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. So thanks again, guys, for having me. It's always good to interact with you both. The topic was, is abortion a right? Abortion is a right because a woman has the right to her bodily autonomy. If a baby is growing inside that woman's womb, it is not a murder. Excuse me, let me say that again. Killing the child is not murder because her reasons are justifiable, because we can't make a choice for her based on why she decides to terminate the pregnancy. We need to be specific in asserting that we're talking about abortion and life within the womb and not outside of the womb. I tried to be specific with that. But I think there may have still been some confusion. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have like a very profound wrap up to this. Abortion is a right of that woman. And we may not like it, but sorry, Andrew. I can see the rest of my
That's
time.
okay. You had
Like
almost
10
6.5 minutes left on the
I
clock,
know.
but I think you did. I think you did an okay wrap up there.
Very
Zen,
straightforward.
yeah, Zen, you've got 7 minutes on the clock for your closing statement. Let me restart the clock. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, I already did it mid debate, but I do want to reiterate my declaration of victory on multiple points in this discussion. The question was, is abortion a right? I don't think I had any real slip ups in my defense of it not being a right. She essentially agreed that it is a human life in the womb, and that abortion is killing that life, but it's justified up to some certain period of time, on the basis of being dependent on the mother, and that delineation occurs at birth because it's supposedly no longer dependent on the mother, at least exclusively, in that there is, quote, potential for help from others. But we went into extensive examples as to why that principle can actually be applied to human beings outside of the womb that are still wholly and entirely exclusively dependent on the mother, and there's no help available. You could say potential for help, but the potential for help still occurs in the womb. There's potential for help of the mother before the baby's born. So that's actually just a red herring. That doesn't even apply at all. What really matters here is dependence on another human being, specifically the mother, but even outside the womb. Regardless of who it is, the baby never escapes a state of dependence until well into adulthood. And even for many people, especially in today's age where we have a lot of kids walking around in adult bodies, they're still dependent on other people well into their 30s and 40s and 50s. And people, mentally disabled people, are dependent on people for life. So it really gets you into a lot of dicey territory where if you're justifying the killing of a human being simply because it's dependent on another, then we're going to be justifying the killing of a lot of human beings that are out walking around in the world today. Which I mean, you saw it. Nikki didn't like that. Nikki doesn't support that, and rightfully so. But it's a contradiction of her own principle. So she's not consistent in her own view, and that's why I was declaring victory. And then when we discussed the question of rights, what are they? Are they universal? Are they empirically justified? Are they, do we have duties to protect and preserve and uphold them? Nikki did pretty much agree to that. Nikki agreed that there are universal rights, that there are universal obligations to protect and preserve those, but she has no grounding for them whatsoever. You don't have to agree to the Christian worldview, the Christian paradigm that we ground our universals in. You don't have to do that, but if you're going to assert universals, you have to have some way to ground them. But all you asserted was, well, it's a universal right to have bodily autonomy because I want bodily autonomy and I wouldn't want mine violated, so I wouldn't violate somebody else's. That's just a relativistic claim. That's not a universal justification for a right. And then when you say we can determine universal oughts through the scientific method The scientific method is just a system of observing and concluding things about the physical world. It doesn't actually conclude any ought claims. It just concludes is claims. So you're not going to be able to derive any universal oughts from the scientific method either. So as a naturalistic, physicalist or empiricist, you're really caught in a conundrum when you're trying to assert rights, because they are immaterial in and of themselves, according to Nikki, which I agree. But she has no way to universally ground them, even though she's claiming that she does. So I would declare victory on those 2 points. Essentially, she contradicted herself on her principle for what constitutes a justified killing of a human, and then she contradicted her principle on what constitutes a universal right. She had no basis for either, and she really had no answers to the questions that I was bringing. So that's what I would sum up the debate with. But I do want to say, I want to be charitable. I do want to thank you, Nikki, for engaging in this, for making a positive claim about the world, because it's really hard to come by people like that these days that are actually willing to assert something and defend it. Whether you agree with Nikki or not, she does come up here and actually try to defend positions about the world. She doesn't play, word games and mind tricks and all that all the, cringe internet debate people do. So I will tip my hat for that. So yeah, thank you for coming on, and I hope that your situation has gotten better. And if you want to plug that GoFundMe or whatever you had up on the internet, I encourage you to do so, because our community is very charitable and willing to give to those in need. So yeah. Anyway, that's all I got. So thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah. Did you want to plug that real quick, Nikki?
Actually, I want to say thank you for supporting me there. I actually got the car, and I don't want to. And Zen, you both have been so helpful, Zen. Thank you so much. A few people have given, but I've kind of reached my goal regarding the car. And if you guys do still want to help out, I am still, of course, always job searching, but that's what it would be.
She has a GoFundMe link on her Twitter page. Go to Nikki's Twitter
Thank
page. She has like a GoFundMe thing, because she had a bad situation that came up. I encourage everybody
It was bad.
to go donate and help out Nikki.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Zen, and thank you.
By the way, before we get into the callers, I just want to let you know that we still have not reached the brand new goal that I set due to pure Irish greed, which is above my head, of $400. We haven't got there yet. Speaking of a generous audience, this is a great time for me to shamelessly insert a plug before we get to the callers from our sponsor. So nothing makes me think about beard and hair care products more than an abortion debate, right? I mean, that's what comes to mind, obviously. But the Crucible today is brought to you in part by Jacinto's. I'll figure out how to pronounce this one of these days. Proudly providing tried and tested men's grooming products. They're all natural, made in the USA. And if you go to jacintos.com and enter Crucible10, you get a 10% off at checkout of any of their excellent beard balms, oils, and their hair care products, all that stuff. Now, my beard is gone, but it will be back. And when it is back, I'm going to be using no, probably not. I don't think I'm ever going to use actual beard care products. But if I were inclined to actually groom myself and cared enough to try to attract a mate or something like that, I'm just set in my ways and have been married for 20 years, I would definitely use these products. So anyway, now that the shameless plug is done for the sponsor as well, we are going to get in to callers. Thank you both for being here tonight. Appreciate it very much. Peacecraft has been waiting in the line for 45 minutes. This guy, right? I guess I guess somebody has really upset him. Peacecraft, can you hear us okay?
Shalom. What's going down?
What's up, dude? Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Right. So, Nikki, I have 3 questions for you, and then I will have one for Mr. Shapiro. And they will increase in intensity for you, Nikki.
I'm not anticipating anything less.
All right. Over the course of the debate, I did see you weasel a little bit between social and legal claims, and you hinged a lot of your arguments on bodily autonomy. But for your first claim and my first question, If you decry abortion critique arguments for the fact that individuals making them will not be paying for clothes, school, leases, braces, whatever, and you hold that the woman's agency is important, ought taxpayers be financially liable to pay for such a procedure? Then, if you believe they ought, why do you deny their political input? If you believe that a person does not have a right to make a claim on a woman's autonomy due to that they're not incurring cost, do they get to have a say so once they are paying for abortion procedures through taxpayer dollars?
So I will need to, actually, I thought about this in my preparation for this debate about taxes and other people's responsibilities. I believe that a woman has a right to an abortion, but I don't necessarily think it should be federally or like taxed. I do believe that if people want to donate or support like voluntarily, I think that's fine. But I don't really think, because that's not really fair, right? Like even for someone like me who would believe that a woman would have a right to an abortion, I wouldn't really want my funds to go to that. So I hope that answers your question, or at least that first question.
You seem to be, that's a decent one. All right. Secondly, in regards to the legality arguments that you made, if you believe that the mother's bodily autonomy has primacy, and if you grant no moral weight to the child before it is birthed, in states where drugs are decriminalized, ought a pregnant woman be able to smoke meth? And why is it considered a double homicide to kill a pregnant woman?
Could you reiterate that, please? I want to make sure I'm writing down, because if you don't mind, I'm actually writing your answers down because I want to go back and critique this. So if you don't mind.
For your claims where you say that the woman in her agency and her bodily autonomy is the number one thing, it's the tippy top rock on the top of the pyramid, into where you don't grant moral agency for the child until it is birthed, ought a pregnant woman in states where drug use is decriminalized be able to smoke methamphetamines while pregnant? And why is it considered a double homicide in over 30 states to kill a pregnant woman? I believe for you to be consistent, you ought say that woman be able to smoke meth, and you ought advocate for that charge of a double homicide to be reduced to a singular homicide. Do you agree?
So I hate this, obviously, but she should. I hate that. I really hate it. But yeah, she should be able to. She shouldn't, but it is her body, and she should definitely get help in that case. But as far as a double homicide, I don't necessarily know enough about the states that declare it and what their criteria is. But what I will do is I will follow up on this more, because I did think about that as well, because somebody did post in a question like that.
I don't think she has to concede the double homicide one, because the baby could still have its bodily autonomy if the mother is not objecting to that. You know what I mean? Like she could have some grounds there to say like it's still a murder.
So I want to congratulate you, Nikki. That's a tough bullet to bite, but there is at least one person in the world who debates worse than you, and that is Lance from the Surfs. All right.
So, well, thank you. I hope that at least I can climb up and debate. At least, let's see if I'm the second to work. Okay, that's cool. This is my fourth debate.
Now this will be the most. This will be the most difficult bullet to bite. All right. I'm forewarning you. And in some ways it might be personal.
I'm not sensitive. It's
okay.
Fine. I may not be the best at this yet, but it's fine. And I can admit if I'm not the best. It's worth debate in life. So
you have said that you inform your morality based on the understanding of the mechanistic interplay of the real world. I also tend towards unified field theory, but I understand its flaws. Here is a potential flaw, and I must see if you bite this bullet. Imagine with me that we exist in a society 1,000 years in the future. The future your great, 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 great grandchildren will live in. Human knowledge of the material world has expanded, and we will assume it has expanded at the rate it has occurred thus far in recorded human history. Could you or would you raise an objection to this society if they told you, why, yes, we can't believe you poor ignorant cavemen with your combustion engines and your blue light screens and your modified corn syrup. You just didn't know that slavery and restricting women's rights was actually good. Society has world peace, food for all. No man dies before the age of 300. We figured this out in the year 2875.
Yo, peace, God. Can you get to your point, please?
Shut up. The breakthrough philosophical and empirical works by Dr. Andrew Wilson was dug out of a time capsule in Dublin. Thank the universe. We don't know how you people even managed. What would you or could you say to your great, 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 great granddaughter who was happy to be in bondage and considered it a moral good?
You'll have to forgive me. I was so caught in the beauty of your narrative that I didn't catch the question.
So, all right, I will try to
Neither
sum
did
up
I.
shortly.
Don't feel bad.
You have said that your morality is informed by the observable interplay of mechanics and sociology in the real world. I tend to
Some of
agree.
it.
I tend to agree a little bit. What do you say to a future human who considers it good that slavery and the reduction of women's rights is brought back, and they look at us as ignorant savages? What do you say to them if they know more than you?
I don't know. That's such an interesting. That's an odd question. I don't know.
He's saying that, like, in the future, if people know more and then they take away all these rights that you believe in, and then they call
Sure.
you,
I got that.
what do you say? Yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
I understand what he's saying, but I don't know how I would respond to that.
I don't
because
believe
that
you
there's
could.
more to. Okay. Well, you know better than me.
The reason, Nikki, that you couldn't is because you, I mean, whether you admit it or not, there's going to be at least a large degree of consequential reasoning to your moral system, like where you're going to look at the outcomes of things, regardless of what happens to get there. And if somebody in the future is showing you why what you believed in at this point is actually
The works
bad,
of Dr. Andrew Wilson. Yes.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So,
Okay.
So
All
you would
right.
actually probably have to submit to that. You would have to submit to what they say.
All right, and for I
mean,
must be fair.
You got
I got one for Zen. I got one
Gotta
for
wrap
Zen.
it
I
up.
mean, if my reasoning was so black and white potentially, but there's so many like eccentricities. But that's fine.
I got one for Zen. Zen,
Okay.
you are against abortion from the instant the sperm hits the egg, correct?
Yeah, assuming like fertilization occurs. Yeah.
Okay. There is a condition that occurs in human children called harlequin ichthyosis. Harlequin ichthyosis warps the
I'm
human
fully aware.
concept.
I'm fully aware of it.
A child is born inside out, knows
Yeah, I'm
nothing
aware.
in pain, and screams in pain for 45 minutes and then dies.
That's not always the case.
I don't believe there's ever been a recorded survivor.
It only has a 50% mortality rate, which is extremely high, but there's 50% chance the child survives. So
For how long?
No, don't.
So you
I
would not
don't know the exact time frame, but I'd say at least like 5 to 10 years. I don't know. I don't know exactly how long.
Okay,
but I would say don't kill it. The answer is no, don't kill it.
I'll grant. Okay, so even if a child is born inside out and is in extreme physical suffering for 10 years, you would not abort that child.
Correct.
That's a bullet to bite. Okie dokie, artichoke.
I don't think it's a bullet. I think it's just consistent.
I mean, if you want to have the child screaming in a bed for 10 years with its nerves exposed to the air,
It
that
doesn't
is
mean
a
that
choice.
it deserves to die. You don't get to dictate that it deserves to die because of that.
Oh, humans absolutely consider it moral. If your wife was in
I
a
didn't
coma,
say that they don't. I said that. Well, okay. Let me rephrase. You're not justified in your claim that human deserves to die just because you wouldn't want to be sitting there screaming and crying. What reason do you actually have to want to kill that baby? Just because you wouldn't want to be in that situation? That's the only situation that baby knows. How do you know? How do you know that death is more preferable to that baby? How do you know that?
I guess I would have to test your. Would you rather be lit on fire in perpetuity? Or
It doesn't matter what I would rather do. You don't
Can
know
you
what
answer that for me,
baby would
please?
rather do.
Can you answer that for me, please? What do you intuit, Zen?
What I would prefer is not to be lit on fire and not to be born
You,
inside
no,
out.
you
But
get the.
that doesn't.
Unfortunately, the world does not allow you this choice. Your nerves can be
Okay, what's
exposed
the
to the
question?
air, and you can feel like you're being lit on fire for the duration of your life, or you can die. What do you choose?
Yeah, okay, I don't know exactly what I would choose in that situation. That's an emotional appeal.
No, it's not.
Yeah, there you go.
right,
That's what I was
fair
trying to
enough.
say
So I don't
previously.
know what I would say. Maybe I would wish for death, but that doesn't follow that that's the thing we ought do. That doesn't follow. Just because I would wish for death in some horrible situation doesn't follow that the person who's in that situation would also wish for death. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would rather survive. You don't
All right.
know that they
Peace
would.
Craft.
So
I got to
it's not
move on. I'm
justified.
sorry. Thank you
Okay,
so much
okay,
for the call in. Have a great day. Will, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead with your
Oh,
question.
shit.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah,
Hi,
so
Will.
this is a question for Zen.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about the practice of like ending, say, life support? Right, like it's done by the family, it's done by hospitals, sometimes unilaterally, sometimes like together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, I think you should try to preserve somebody as long as there's like reasonable expectation that they can be preserved and that you have the resources to do it. But sometimes you just don't. But now to be clear, I don't think that this is analogous to abortion, because life support would be where somebody is like in danger or like dying of some condition that you didn't actually cause, and you're attempting to preserve it until you can't anymore. Abortion is where there's a baby that's fully, viable and healthy, generally speaking, and if left alone, it'll be fine. But then you intervene to kill it, so it's not the same. It's not completely analogous. But
yes, but like life support is usually done like on people who are alive, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with them. They're just like
yeah, there
not
is something
outwardly
wrong with them.
responsive.
They're dying.
No, some people just take a knock to the head and they just don't respond. Right, they're perfectly
Right,
fine.
and I think as much as it's within our capabilities, we should try to preserve people.
Yes, but we don't, right? Because we have like
because it's not
selfish
it's
interest,
not
right?
reasonable. It's not reasonable to allocate like endless resources to one person who has like no chance of living at the expense of 10 other people. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, isn't it also like not reasonable to like allocate like a lot of resources raising a baby in your gut? Well, like,
It's not at the expense of the
career.
life of other people. And if it is, to be clear, like if the
Yes,
mother's
but, like-
life is in, let me be clear, if the mother's life is in danger, like she's got ectopic pregnancy or some other like lethal condition, then that would be justified to terminate the pregnancy because you have literally no choice or the mother dies. That's fine. I mean, it's not good, but it's like acceptable to do. But that's not what normal pregnancies are. The mother's life is not in jeopardy just by birthing a child. Generally,
one more example, Zen. So, like sometimes families will actually refuse life support, even though the doctor says, there's a chance." Right? What do you think about that? Like that's still killing like the person, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not killing. Whatever killed them is the disease that they had or the condition.
Yes, but you can they can survive like perfectly.
Yeah, and I think generally you should try. But there's
like
certain
this
is one where there's no hard line or no rigid principle you can go by. It's just like there's conditions that you can support people in and sustain them, and there's conditions where you can't. Like I don't know, but I think you generally should try if you can.
But you do agree that like people in a vegetative state lose personhood, right? They still have like you can still do like wrong to them. You can't beat them. You can't like rape them, right?
Then they don't lose personhood.
But you can't actually like
personhood.
fill out the paperwork and get them to die.
Right, so they don't lose personhood. Yeah, I agree.
No, they lose personhood. You can get them.
No, I don't think that they do.
You can pull the plug out of them. If the random janitor pulls their
plug.
Yeah,
but it's not. Again, it's not the same. It's not like.
Yeah,
it's not.
I have a quick question here as you guys are going. Does a prisoner who's slated for execution lose personhood?
I mean, yeah, like that's legislatively they lose personhood because.
So could you like?
They were judged by a jury of their peers, and
no, dude. If a prisoner is on death row and a prison guard like beat them to death or something or raped them prior to their execution date, they would still get charged with a crime.
They lose some personhood, not all, but they do lose some.
That's
some
arbitrary.
Personhood because you can kill them.
That's arbitrary.
Right.
I don't think personhood's arbitrary like that.
Like,
Yeah, and
It's
I
either
also
you
don't
are or
think
you
I don't think personhood
can
means
lose- I'm
can't
sa-
be killed. That's the weirdest definition of personhood I've ever heard. Is if you can be killed, you lose your
Yeah.
personhood. What is that?
no, you
What?
lose some of your
Hey,
personhood.
I have
Personhood
an
is
interjection real quickly. Andrew, if you don't mind, this is Zen. I should have asked you earlier, just real quickly. How do you define personhood?
I mean, a human life that's made in the image of God, if you want the exhaustive answer. So that would begin a conception.
Okay. I see. Okay.
So, I mean, I think, I mean, if I'm grounding, again, like goes back to like, if I'm grounding universal personhood to a given subject, then that's how I would do it. That's how I would define it, essentially. Unless I'm debating a vegan, then I would be more meticulous. But
Anyway, Will,
You mean like
thank
vegan
you.
games?
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
that was funny.
on,
That
on,
was
on
so
veganism
funny.
specifically.
I'm so
Yeah, all
sorry.
I'm saying
That
is that
was
personhood is a
that
spectrum.
was
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah, no, I
That's such a hot
understand.
mess.
Yeah.
I understand where you were
argument.
going there, Will. I appreciate the call in very much. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Okay.
All right, thanks, man.
Okay. And by the way, I didn't do the spiel that I normally do, but we do things a little differently on the Crucible. When we get into the call-in section, we consider the debate to be over. It doesn't mean there's not going to be more back and forth, but the moderator can interject, and I often will with questions of my own, especially to callers or things that don't make any sense to me or that I want clarification on. Adam Dole, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead with your question, please.
I'm known for being very patient. Nikki, I got a question for you. Can you demonstrate rights? Can you provide a demonstration for rights?
A demonstration of rights
Yeah.
empirically.
Any demonstration.
That's an interesting question. Since rights aren't physical things, they're kind of difficult to provide a demonstration of. I can just give an example of what I think a right is and what
Well,
a person should have.
I want a demonstration for rights.
Oh, you want a demonstration? Oh my God, I should absolutely just jump right to attention and give you what you want, huh?
Yeah.
Well, let me just reiterate that I don't believe that I can do that since these are not physical things. And I thought Zen and I covered that during the debate. I don't know if you heard it, but I don't know how I could do that.
I didn't listen to the whole debate. I listened to like 2/3.
That's fine. No, I don't think I can do that. I'm not sure if anybody could, but if you know how someone could, I'm curious to.
Well, wouldn't it follow then, Nikki? Like if you're an empiricist and you think like all truth claims need to be justified empirically, if rights can't be justified empirically, then you can't make any claims to rights.
I didn't say they couldn't be justified. He just wanted like some type of hard line demonstration of
demonstrate. Same thing. That's what I mean.
Yeah, justification, demonstration. And I'm asking you
justification is not the same as demonstration.
Okay, well, hold on. If it isn't clear what I'm doing, I'll spell it out for you, so it's really obvious. In every single debate that you've done with Christian Mario, with RC Apologist, and Chase Haggard, you always ask for a demonstration. I'm a fan of the Crucible. You always ask for a demonstration of God. Now, I'm simply.
I didn't ask for it here.
No, you didn't ask it here, but you've asked it in other places. So
what he's
saying, Nikki, is that you don't.
Oh, I hear him.
You don't acknowledge claims to God because it hasn't been demonstrated. So he wants to know, like, how are you making claims to rights if those haven't been demonstrated?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So as I said earlier, that based on our observation of how we exist within the world and how humans exist together, we can determine what rights we should have in our environment. Those are things that are demonstrated through our behavior. So the one thing I did say that we could assure, or like the one right that I do know we do all have or should have, is body autonomy. Excuse me. So as far as other rights, those are a little bit more difficult. But as far as the bodily autonomy right, I have a right to my own body and how my own body operates, hopefully for as long as possible, and you do as well. And people infringing on that is, in my perspective, not right. No pun intended.
Well, but wouldn't that mean, specifically in the case of bodily autonomy, that these rights would be very subjective to the society in which they exist? For example, okay, so
yeah, because if you live in but I can't think of a society. To your point, I can't think of a society where that wouldn't apply. But I mean, I couldn't think of one. But,
Well, I can certainly think of quite a few societies just off the top of my head where right to bodily autonomy could be taken away. Quite
not that
often.
it couldn't be taken away, but not that it could not be taken away, but that people shouldn't have it. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right, and
it's taken away a lot, but it shouldn't be.
And one last thing, then I'll be done. You said earlier in the debate that you believe that all like castes of a society should have the same rights. Like the people at the top of society should have the same rights as the people at the bottom of society. Why?
Like basic. Well, I mean, basic rights like bodily autonomy. Yeah. Why would somebody who's rich? Okay. You're so funny. I just find it humorous. How some people think that being aggressive is a better way of communicating with someone or getting an answer that they'd like, rather than just being diplomatic. But maybe that's just me. Well, that's because we are humans, and all of us are have a right to our own bodily autonomy. Having more money doesn't change that, or being a male or doesn't change that.
But wouldn't that be entirely culturally subjective? Like,
no.
What? Like there are
most cultures
throughout human history. Most cultures throughout human history have vastly different standards for different classes of people with different rights.
I didn't say that wasn't the case. I said it should not be. I already told you that, and I told you that the very basic right that I've said that we should all have is bodily autonomy, and that should be applied to the poorest, darkest person and the richest, whitest person. So that should answer your question. Is there any follow-up you have to that?
Well, you already admitted that rights are culturally subjective.
No, I didn't.
So okay, so you.
I said that they could be.
Adam, wait.
All right,
sorry.
Gotcha.
I have to move on to the next caller. I appreciate the call in. I know that everybody wants to have more time, but we only have the time that we have. Thank you so much, Adam. Have a wonderful night. I appreciate it very much. Rachel, you've been waiting on the back end. Go ahead.
Oh,
hello.
hi,
can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone on the panel. Okay, I have a question. I have a question for Nikki. You said that the reason that it's different when the child is inside the womb is because once it's outside the womb, there's this opportunity for other people to help, and it's not on the mother to keep the baby alive.
Not exclusively. I mean, ideally, yeah, but not always.
Well, I don't know if you've seen in the news, but scientists from the Netherlands are saying that they have created artificial wombs in which they can grow embryos, and that within the next 10 years, they will be able to completely gestate human beings within these wombs, these artificial wombs.
Wow, a total Brave New World scenario. That's really cool.
Right. I know, it's kind of freaky, but let's say that let's say it does come to pass, and the average age of a fetus at the time they are aborted is somewhere between 10 and 13 weeks on average. So let's say there's a 12-week-old fetus that's aborted, or the mother wants to have an abortion, and there is the opportunity for someone to help, and they say, well, if you don't want this baby, we can transplant it to an artificial womb, and then it can grow to be a baby, and they can grow up and have a life, and you don't have to carry it to term. Would that eliminate the need for a right to abortion in your view?
It wouldn't eliminate the right, but I would feel that she should definitely take that option, but I can't make her.
Why wouldn't it eliminate the right? If the life of the fetus can be preserved outside of her, why would she still have the right to kill it? Based on your argument.
Based on my argument. Well, she's still the right of the, based on my argument. That's a very interesting scenario. And I was actually wondering about the artificial womb and how far along it had come along. But and I did say to Zen that the right goes up to birth, right before the baby comes out of the birth canal. So that is even still with the opportunity to preserve the fetus, even with the technology we still have. And I still did remain consistent in saying at least she does still remain, keep that right. So, I will remain consistent in saying she still does have the right, even though technology is advancing. And hopefully with the advancements of technology, abortions will become less and less frequent, and women will be more inclined to utilize.
Yes, but your argument was based on this idea that It's in her
Right.
body, and therefore it's dependent on her for survival. If we remove that from the equation and she goes in to have an abortion and the abortion provider says, actually, we don't have to do this now. We can simply transplant this fetus into an artificial womb and it can be born healthy and normal.
Yeah.
Based on your argument, wouldn't that negate your entire argument and the need for abortion?
No, because it doesn't negate the right. I'm talking about the right, not whether or not she should do it or whether or not I like it
But
or
you said the right was based on the fact that nobody else can, gestate the fetus until after it's outside of her body.
there's
so if
more
we
to
have
it.
the option,
That's one part of it.
oh,
That's,
okay. So
yeah,
now
there's
there's a different reason why there's a
there's a
kill the baby.
multifaceted. It's multifaceted. It's not just that. I was also talking about her socioeconomic opportunities as well.
Right,
And other
but what
things
I'm
like
saying
that.
is they can sit. So this is what you just said. What you just said is if a woman is pregnant at 10 or 12 weeks and she doesn't want the baby, even if they can simply remove it from her and let it continue to live, you think she has the right to have them remove it and kill it because she doesn't want it to exist. That's what you
I
just
don't
argued.
think if we're going to remove it, I'm sorry, my apologies. If we're removing it, excuse me. If we are removing it, we are removing it to put it in the womb, right? Not to kill it. This is me saying that she's making the choice not to put it in the womb. That's my point.
You're saying she still has the right to kill it. You're saying she has the right to choose not to allow it to live, even though scientists have this way to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like she has the right not to accept that help. That's my point. Yeah, like she does have that right to not do that if that's not what she wants to do. It doesn't take the right away. Just like she has the right not to accept the other help.
Right. So you just negated your own entire argument for the basis of the basis of abortion rights because you said that again, this is only because the mother is the only person who can keep it alive. And I'm saying if there's a technological way to, you don't have to have the baby, you don't have to be pregnant, you don't have to give birth, you don't have to go through the pregnancy at all. We will simply take this fetus, we will put it in an artificial womb and it can grow there and you never have to see it, you never have to know about it, you don't have to go through a pregnancy or anything. You're saying she still has the right to say, no, I want it to die. Okay, what are the additional factors that would give her the right?
No, you just went over them. So you just went over them. I was agreeing with you in that the things that you mentioned are factors that should be considered. So the right to, because there's more to it, right? Like it's the ability to carry the child is a major part of it. It's also living with the fact that you have a child out there. There's so many other facets. And that's why I tried to iterate. And that's fair. And that's why I tried to iterate that that's a big part of the argument. But that's why we can't be in a position to make that choice for that person. Is because you're right. There's a ton of things to consider. And that's a major part of it. But as far as like taking the right away completely because of that, I'm not prepared to do that.
Okay. And Rachel, we got to wrap it. We got to wrap it there.
Sure. Wait, I've got one more question that's a follow-up to that.
Fast. Got to make it fast.
Bullet. Yes.
Right.
So you said that she still should have the right to kill the baby, even if they can completely just grow it in an artificial womb. And my question is, you said throughout the debate, you said throughout the debate that this is her baby, it's her baby, it's her baby. Is the baby not 50% made up of the father's DNA? So if the baby can be grown outside the mother, shouldn't the father have any rights at this point since there is an alternative to growing the baby in the mother?
The father has a say. I did say that at the very beginning. I tried to give like a brief, like this wasn't the best example, but like my sister's having a child, she's having my nephew. That's not a good example. But yes, there are other people in the life who are going to have an opinion. The father does have a say. Ultimately, it is her child. I do think.
But it's his child, 50%. It's 50% made from his DNA. Why are we giving the mother complete and total ownership?
I think that is kind of an interesting question. So she's asking.
I was going to follow up with that.
With this external womb. With this external womb.
With this, specifically. Okay.
Yeah. So now they're not Now they're not inside the woman. So shouldn't the man, like if she says no, he should be able to then just be like, well, fuck off. Who cares? It's not your body, your choice now, right?
It's very interesting. That is it. Oh God, I absolutely love that scenario because Brave New World is actually my second favorite book, and they do completely grow children in artificial facilities. And in that case, he does have rights. I'm not sure how far they extend though, and I'm not sure how far I'd be willing to admit that he could have.
So
But
basically, abortion rights are really about the right to kill a man's baby. Because you mad. I'm mad. I don't want your baby for whatever reason. You dumped me, or I don't like you anymore. You cheated. I cheated. Whatever. It's really about the right to kill the man's baby, is what you're saying.
It's really very myopic. I mean, that's a very
not
myopic
based on everything you just said.
But it's just kind of an introduction of emotion that detracts from the eccentricities that go into making this decision.
It's a logical deduction where you said, well, there's complications and there's other factors, and you're just dancing around the fact that what you're really saying is, no, I think the woman should be able to kill the man's baby.
It's not just his baby, Rachel. But it's also hers as well.
What if
and they need to come together and work.
You can't kill
but it's not just
a man's
his
baby.
All right.
Some people
not
do.
hers.
I hate it. Well,
we need to find a way to get Rachel and Nikki in a one-on-one.
Yeah, we have to move on from the call for now. Thank you so much for the call and appreciate it. I do want to quickly, before I get to the next caller, though, follow up on this because this actually doesn't make any sense to me. If it's an artificial womb, it's the man and the woman says, "I don't want the child." Well, who gives a shit what she wants? At that point, what claim would she have on it? I don't understand. What would the claim then be?
Honestly, it would just be I don't want to have I will not be having.
Let's say she doesn't have to take care of it either.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I will not be having any children biologically. I will be adopting, and I guess I'll be thankful to the women who did decide to put up their kids for adoption rather than abort. So in this case, it helps me, and that just goes back to it being her baby and her having to carry it initially and do kind of all of that.
Well, let's just say it's IVF.
Yeah, but she doesn't. Hang on, but she doesn't have to do that.
Well, if it's IVF, then that doesn't.
Well, in an artificial womb.
Well, initially, isn't there like an initial, if I'm not mistaken, based on my understanding, an initial gestational period?
Well, they extract the egg and then they put it in. They fertilize it with the man's semen, and then they put it in an artificial womb, and then she says.
Oh, no, that's not the same.
And she says, "No, I don't want it anymore." Right? I don't want it. And he says,
"Oh, that's completely separate.
I don't give a shit what you want." Right? I don't care what you want. I still want it. Why should at that point she shouldn't have any say, right?
No, and that's it. Okay, so in the case of IVF, that's a completely different situation. My apologies. I was thinking there was an initial gestational period that she had to carry the baby to a certain point, and then at like week 12, I don't remember what she said, 13, 14, then they took it.
But even then, if it was
completely separate.
If it was transplanted to an artificial womb, like who gives a shit what she wants at that point? It's not on her anymore.
I think my response was to does she want it transplanted? That's what I was responding to. Does she want it transplanted to the artificial womb?
So Nikki would say that in the scenario of like goes to the abortion clinic and they say, actually, we don't have to do this. We can put it in an artificial womb if you want. She could still
right to say no.
Say no, I want to kill it. Yes. She could say that and be consistent.
Yeah, but once it's transplanted to the artificial womb, she shouldn't really have a choice, right?
Oh no, once it's transplanted, right? But that goes back to the whole potential. And I know it's not a great argument, but like the potential for help thing, that goes back to what I was saying and how I would much prefer. Well, I don't like abortion. Okay, I hate the concept of it myself, but I just can't say someone doesn't have a right to it. But that goes back to that point. So yes.
Okay. Corin, thanks so much for patiently waiting. Go ahead.
Before I get to my question, I just need to say, Nikki, before you have another abortion debate, we need to have a talk about your position because holy, this was bad.
That's fair. Oh, was it? Okay.
It was really
bad.
Do you
mind actually? Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I'll DM you after this.
Yeah, do you mind? Because one thing I want to do.
He's a vegan. Don't listen to him, Nikki. Don't let him brainwash you. He's a vegan.
No, I'm joking. One thing
he'll have you eating soy in no time. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't respond to his DM. Ignore it.
That's hilarious. No, if you don't mind, because one thing I do want to do is get better, and because I'm not good at this right now. I'm not good at it. I suck at it. And the goal I have is to improve. So that's why I'm doing these debates. And I have quite a few coming up this month. So I'm just trying to get better at it. So if you don't mind, I would absolutely love to improve. So thank you.
You
for
shouldn't
that.
feel too bad about this. As much as it pains me to say this, Zen is a really good debater on abortion.
That's fair.
I have to give him the tip of the hat to that one too.
And that's cool. And that's
I appreciate
I don't
that.
mind it. And he is. I
Stop
watched.
kissing people's asses and get to your
Okay,
fucking
yeah,
fucking
I'm trying.
question.
Okay, okay, Zen.
I watched
So like,
quite a few.
Oh, wait, hang
Yeah.
on. Before you go. All right. I'm ready.
okay. So like, I'm just wondering like the violinist hypothetical right now. So say like you are taken by the group of the best violinists, and they hook you up to a machine that pumps your blood into another person's blood, and that creates the system, and that's the only way this person is going to be able to survive. Is it going to be a bad action for you to pull that IVF out of your arm?
What modality are we speaking in?
Yeah, I didn't use modal language, by the way. I appreciate
modality?
it though.
Depends on what you mean by that.
Yeah, what language should I use in modal scope?
Depends on what you mean. Sorry.
Okay, Zen.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm done. All right. So yeah, the violinist thing, like you get in a car accident, you wake up and somebody's attached to you, by some machine that's, somebody else is feeding off of your resources. And I guess the perfect analogy here would be like if a woman got raped and is now impregnated, like that would be basically the equivalent. Essentially, what I would argue is that assuming that the person is attached to you for a set period of time, let's say 9 months or less, similar to a pregnancy, then you wouldn't be justified in killing them, in my opinion. If it's just completely indefinite, then I don't know. I don't know what you would do there, but I don't think that's analogous. When we're talking about like rape abortions, those women, they're only going to be pregnant for a set amount of time, at which point they could give the baby up for adoption or keep it if they wanted to. And but essentially the argument is that baby and the person being hooked up to you via the machine, they're innocent. They didn't actually ask to be put there. So you're not there. I don't believe that there's a justification to kill them because they didn't actually put themselves in that position. So
wouldn't a utilitarian have to kind of agree with that, Corinth?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. So
it would depend on like a weighing of dispositionary differences on if we like allow this, but that gets
now you're speaking in modal language again. So
that wasn't modal language.
That was modal
like
language.
An applied modal scope. Like what modal scopes do you think I used there?
You used the modal scope of your dumbass. That's the modal scope that you use.
You caught me.
And it depends on what you mean by that. Actually, depends on what you mean. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't have a view on that.
What's modal mean?
I'm agnostic on modal.
Anyway, go ahead, Corinth. I'm just messing with you.
Then, do you like take a difference between like positive and negative actions in regards to abortion?
I'm agnostic on that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I take a positive position that abortion is murder. Yeah.
No, I mean like a positive versus a negative action are going to be things that like are weighed morally differently.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Actually, I'm not trolling. I don't know exactly what you mean.
So like if I said to you, this woman's not going to get like an abortion, but she's just going to continue to drink and do things that are going to likely harm the fetus, is that going to be like a bad?
Yeah, I think that would depend on your intent though. Like one time I was debating Stardust a long time ago, and she was like, do you think that like a woman shouldn't be doing somersaults because like if she's pregnant and she does a somersault, it could like detach the fetus and kill it? It's like, I mean, if you knew everything, then sure, but we don't know everything, and it really depends on your intent behind the action. Like, should a woman drink a beer or a glass of wine while she's pregnant? Probably not, because it could exude some harm on the fetus and kill it. But should she not like carry a backpack because that could put strain on her and kill the fetus? Like, it's like you can't be too autistic in that regard. It really depends on your intent behind the action.
It's really a modal distribution when you get right down to it. It's a modal distribution of intent.
Yeah, what he said.
But like if we go down like a neutral intent, like she's not doing it to harm the baby, she's doing it like with indifference to the livelihood or the health of the fetus inside of her.
Would I mean, again, I think it would depend on what the action specifically is. Like if it's drinking alcohol, I think you could attribute some responsibility there. But if it's just like I said, just carrying like a moderately heavy object that increases her risk of a miscarriage, for example, then that I don't think that there's like malicious intent behind that versus drinking. I guess. Well, you said neutral intent, so I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Dude. I think
It's
the
like
intent
her
does.
favorite tea is this.
Corinth. I have to move to the next caller. I gave you a lot of time. You may not think
Yeah,
so,
thank
but I
you.
actually did. I
Also-
appreciate,
Email me, please.
appreciate
Also,
the
you
call very
suck.
much.
Also, you suck,
Can I
Corn.
have
Yeah, and
one
you
last
suck,
quick
Corinth.
qualifier?
Yeah, real quick.
So, like, say her favorite drink is this form of like herbal tea that's going to cause a miscarriage. She's not drinking this with any sort of intent. She drank it beforehand just because she really likes the flavor. Would that be like a bad action for her to do?
No, I don't. I think the intent would matter. So no.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate
Corinth, if you
oh,
could.
Yep,
Sorry.
I'll email
Can
you right now.
Yeah, email me. Thanks.
All right, take care, man. Have a good night. We give Corinth a lot of shit, but I like Corinth.
He seems dope.
Casimir, you've been waiting very patiently in the background. I
hi,
see that you have
Casimir.
a green screen behind you and
Let's
some dude
go.
with a magical Christian ball or crystal
Yes.
ball. I don't know what the deal is
Let's
with that,
go.
but
I like that.
It's
fair
the
enough. Is
orb.
that
We're
Rasputin?
pondering
Is
the
it
orb.
Rasputin?
No, we're
Who is
pondering
it?
the orb today.
Okay, go ahead.
Corinth, the little bastard, stole my question for me. So, but it's not theft because it's intellectual property, so whatever. So Zen, I'm gonna follow up a little bit. Imagine this violinist girl. I'm glad that you saved her life. What would happen in a scenario where you can actually safely detach her and say, she gets maintained on a machine? In that moment, are you obliged to stay hooked up? Let's say even if you agreed to it initially.
Wait, hang on. If you are hooked up and it's safe to detach the person,
Yeah, you agreed to it initially, but then midway you're like, I don't want to do it anymore.
oh no,
Someone
no,
else
I wouldn't
volunteer.
agree. I definitely wouldn't agree with that. No, because that would be like a woman having sex and then not agreeing to the consequences of that. So I
Well-
wouldn't agree with that at all.
Well, I don't understand though. Why would that be problematic, Zen? If the person's
Well,
hooked up to
assuming
you,
There's a
and then
surrogate that will
halfway
replace
through,
you.
halfway through, they're like, we can just hook this person up to a machine, and you're like, oh, that's awesome.
No, okay, I misunderstood the question then. I thought you detach them and then they die, but you said safely detach. Then I guess theoretically, I don't see a moral issue with that. But I think in the real world, I think it's incredibly risky. It just seems like it would be if it's not necessary to do that, like for like the woman's health or whatever. But yeah.
So
But I don't have a moral
if we reduce the threshold of risk down to something normal,
Yeah,
in
like
society
I
to
said.
already accept, then it's gonna be fine. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like theoretically, like if there was like little to no risk involved in that, then it would be fine. I guess, but I'm just saying like in practice, it doesn't appear to be that way. So that's what I would say.
Nikki,
Like when you deliver a baby early at like 20 to 20 whatever weeks, and put it in the NICU, like it still is like a very like feeble life that is at risk of dying to basically nothing. Like,
But if you were able to cut that down to basically the same exact percentage as a normal live birth, you wouldn't care.
Not in the context of this conversation. I guess I would have to permit it. But then it would get into more of like a cultural question of like, why are mothers like so desperate to reduce their time as being pregnant or whatever? Like, that's a different conversation. But for the context of this conversation, I would have no moral issue with it. No.
Okay.
Okay.
I have my next question is towards Nikki. Nikki,
Hello.
imagine that you are based and you actually own a firearm or some weapon, and you wake up and there's like a sleeping, let's say, girl that is in the middle of your
really?
living room, just
Oh.
appeared out of nowhere. You can't
Oh,
wake
lucky
her
me.
up. You can't wake
Oh.
her up, but she appears to be breathing, right? So,
Okay.
so the question.
Wait, what
is,
kind of girl? Like a child girl or like a
let's say
girl?
it's a child, just to.
Oh no, not that type. Oh,
Yeah, exactly. So
that's not fun.
to-
Okay.
To clear it up.
I was like, well, this doesn't sound.
So,
oh no.
Are you allowed to?
Was that a lesbian joke? I think that was
It
a lesbian
was.
joke. That was
I was
over
trying
my
to be
head.
funny.
Over
I
my
was trying to
head.
be funny.
All right, go ahead.
It was. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to eliminate the man hatred and the other stuff. So.
Oh, I don't hate men.
Okay, even better. So, do you have a right to, let's say, to evict this person, like to grab them and remove them under some conditions.
I don't know. Why is she there?
From your apartment.
Why is she there?
She just appeared there. You don't know what happened.
Oh, I probably would wake her up and say, "Hey, sweetie, you're in my home, and I don't know you."
Completely unconscious. Does not.
Oh, I would call the police.
You can't.
So you would just have her removed, right? You wouldn't.
You would have. Okay, so you would be fine with the police taking her and removing her out of the apartment.
A child in my house I don't know? Yes, get them out. Why are they there? I don't want anybody's child in my house unless I adopted them. That doesn't make it no. That's why I tell my neighbors. She's like, if my kid comes home from school, can she sit on your porch? I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not. If she gets kidnapped, it's not my fault.
Okay, that's consistent. I agree. That's consistent. That's fine. It's good. So just a quick follow-up. Are you allowed to grab your kitchen knife and cut her up and dissect her into pieces first?
Why on earth would you even ask me such an outrageous question?
Oh, okay, because that's what's so the difference between an eviction, which is the first case we examined, and an abortion.
You mean calling Child Protective Services?
No, you call Child Protective Services, but in the case of an abortion, the Child Protective Services come in with a big knife, they cut the head off, and then they dissect the body with forceps, and then they remove the body through the front door in pieces using a suction machine. That's
like a 10-year-old, right? Made. This is like a 10-year-old child that's laying on my floor. I'm sorry. I'm trying to like.
Yes, exactly. But we can understand move straight to the baby analogy. So.
This is about the baby. Okay, I'm like, why is there a 10-year-old child on my floor? This makes no sense.
Yeah. So what he's saying. So to condense
okay, I'm following you now.
Yeah. Like, he's just saying like you wake up one day, there's a kid who appears on the ground. You think that you have the right to have the child removed from your home. Obviously, they're unconscious. This kind of thing. But you don't think that it's okay to go grab a knife and like cut the child up?
No.
Right.
This is that's what they do in abortions, always Nikki. Get.
Do you understand that's what they do in abortions?
I do. As I said, y'all, I'm tired. I'm sorry.
So we're not.
I do understand that.
So we're not.
But this is not my child. This is a grown 10-year-old baby.
Please focus right now. I'm gonna ask you a direct question.
Doing the best I can.
In case of an abortion, if we can, so you're saying that an abortion cannot happen when murder is committed inside the womb first.
If it's not justified, if it's justified, it's not murder, right? That's what we've already determined. So I already said I cannot. You use the word murder. Murder is an unjustified killing. The mother has her reasons. They could be justifiable. It's not my place to say that or not.
So you can cut up the baby in your living room?
See, now you're talking to me about what I would do, not another woman in her pregnancy.
Another woman.
I would not.
Would you put her? Would you if she finds a little baby in her living room, she grabs a knife and cuts the baby? Would you convict her of a killing, of murder?
Yeah, because it's a baby in her living room, not a baby in her womb, not a 10-year-old random. This is not analogous. So,
In what way?
You're talking about me walking into my living room and seeing a child, like a child like across the street from me, like the 10-year-old who her mom's like, can she sit on her porch?
What if it's an infant in like a machine in one of those artificial wombs? Are you allowed to like smash the thing?
No. Why would anybody? That's just such a. It's outrageous. I know, and like I told Zen earlier, I told
why during the abortion procedure is the mother allowed to kill the child instead of just evicting? Do you understand that eviction is just peaceful?
And remember what I told you.
C-section, right?
Remember what I told you.
C-section and remove the baby.
I don't agree with that, but it's her right. It is her right, as I said 1,000 times. Her right, dude. You have a problem with that? You can do whatever you feel. But you asked me, it is her right. I know how abortions are performed. I'm not a fool, despite how tonight's gone. I know how abortions are performed. So I get it. It's just not a good analogy. I get what you're saying. It's just not the best analogy.
All right, Cass.
But maybe there's a better way to
I got a analogy. I gave you a long period of time there with that call. I appreciate very much the call in. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Appreciate it. By the way, I did want to ask you before you went. I made you a mod in the chat, and you didn't even sign a contract. So I was wondering how mad you are at me. Right? So then I did it again. I did it against your will. There wasn't any contract at all. You know. So
it's like not like I'm going to abuse it and make you regret it or something.
Right. I'll see you, man. Have a good day. Noah, you've been waiting patiently. You're the last caller of the night. I know it sucks to be. I know it sucks to be last, but go ahead, man.
Yeah, this hi, thank you. Yeah, this question is for Nikki. My question is, do you believe? I think you kind of answered this, but I guess I'd want to see a more like specific answer. Do you believe that, like, say every single government in the world refused to acknowledge the rights that you saw as being rights, how would you justify that those things should be rights if absolutely nobody acknowledged them? So, for example, right to an abortion, right to bodily autonomy, women's rights, how would you justify that?
How would I justify it, or what would I do about it?
I'm saying, how, like, say that you were trying to argue with people within this world, right? How would you justify it? What would you appeal to justify the fact that these things exist if nobody acknowledges that they exist?
Well, it depends on what that right is. For example, as far as the right to vote, looking at the privileged in our society as I hate bringing this up, but I guess that's where we are. As a Black woman, like men first got the right to vote, then white women, and then Black women. So looking at those comparisons, I would look at that and say, well, what makes me different from them? Is it simply because I have darker skin? Well, that's not a justifiable reason. I still have the ability to make cogent decisions and observe my environment and have a say. So in that case, I guess I would do what has been done in the past, and I hate to say this, but march and advocate.
Sorry, I think I phrased my question the wrong way. I guess it's how do you justify the existence of rights at all? I would say if nobody acknowledges them. So I'm saying say that the rights are just not acknowledged, how would you justify the existence of, like, in what do you believe that rights exist even if nobody acknowledges them?
I can't see a world where that's not the case. I guess what I'm trying to say is because somebody's going to have some type of rights in an environment where humans live together. And the usual issue that happens with human rights is because a specific few have those rights and the others start asking questions. So I don't necessarily know how to picture an environment where that's not the case. So with that being said, I would still say if a group of people don't, they don't have a particular set of rights, that doesn't mean, and no one, acknowledges them, that doesn't mean they don't have those rights or shouldn't have those rights. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, my question is more to you. I guess it's not about a specific right, but how do you justify the existence of rights at all, independent of any human beings, independent of any social constructs? How do you justify
They don't
the idea of rights?
Those things. They don't exist without those things.
Wait. You said that you believe rights are universal.
Yeah, but within those constructs, though, like you can't just be floating out in the middle of nowhere and then
that's what universal
what is a right in
comparison? A human mind independent fact would be like if you believe in a universal.
That's not how I define universal. Maybe we have a misunderstanding or maybe we are incongruent because that's not how I would have defined it. So when you ask that question, that's not what I had in my mind when I was answering it. So,
right,
okay.
Go ahead.
But no, when I say universal, I mean across the board. So that's what I meant when I used the term. Does that answer your question?
Go ahead.
Yes, I think not kind of, but not really. I guess I would say, you believe that rights are socially constructed then?
Yeah, because we need a social environment in which to determine what rights we should have.
So if human beings never developed the concept of rights, right? Like if society never had the concept of rights, which it never had for a very long time, if you go back to the Bronze Age, certain points in time, how would you then justify it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if the construct was never created, right, then how would you justify rights existing at all?
I don't think I could because there would be no basis for them.
Then they're not universal.
but that's not how I use the term universal. If we're going to discuss what universal means now, then yeah, that we can do that. But when I say universal, I mean across the board, applying to everyone, not universal in that it exists somewhere abstractly in the universe and there's a God floating around out there that verifies it or doesn't. That's not how I use the term universal.
Yeah, but then like what he just said is like pre-enlightenment. Essentially, there was no concept of rights, but did those rights still apply across the board to everyone, even though there was
I don't think pre-enlightenment. I'm thinking of when you say okay. So when I'm thinking of like pre-hunter gatherer, we're just we're starting to get it together type of environment.
Yeah, there was
not
no
like
rights. There were no rights. There were duties. There were duties to protect and preserve your family, yourself, your community. There was no rights.
There's still right. No, there were rights. There were still rights to bodily autonomy. Like you can't just run over and rape somebody just because. I mean,
yeah, but those were associated with duties. So you had
yeah, but they're still there though, and I would still say that those rights still exist based on the social environment and universally should be applied based on my usage of the word universal.
Gotcha. Okay, caller, thank you so much for the call, and I appreciate it very much.
Right,
have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. I'm sure everybody's tired. Thank you so much again for coming on, Nikki. I do want to kind of dive through the super chats here real quick. Won't take too long. $20 comes in from Philip H. Says absolutely nothing. Appreciate that very much, Philip. Oh, real quick, let me do this real fast. Hang on. Let's see if we can. There we go. Okay. $200 comes in from Anonymous. He says, Christ is risen. Glory to God for all things. Appreciate that very much, Anonymous. Very much. Huge super chat. $10 comes in from Former Fetus and says, absolutely nothing. I guess that's like ironically hilarious and in so many ways, especially that no message was entered at all. $5 comes in. Well, Emmanuel says absolutely nothing. $5 comes in from Wicked Wally. He says all hypotheticals should be taking place in Wyoming, which isn't a real place anyway. Big cartography supports abortion, by the way.
That's why I didn't. That's why I said Montana, because I know Wyoming is fake. We all know that.
Of course it is. God. Of course, yeah. $5 comes in from Justin MF. He says, thanks for the great debate. I feel sick, though, to be honest. I hope Beat the Cult dumps her relativistic worldview real soon.
What does that mean?
So he thinks you're a moral relativist, and he hopes that you won't be forever.
Not a moral relativist. All right, next debate.
Yeah. Wicked Wally sends in another $5, and he says, how independent are any of us if we all started out being evicted from our first apartment?
That's pretty funny. I like that. That's really funny.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. $5 comes in from Finlay Bennett, who says, very cool. Thank you for the $5, Finlay. Appreciate it very much. You do have to change the name Finlay, though, because that's a fucking just an awful name. $4 comes in from Since Number One Hater, who says,
me? No, I didn't say
this says Since Number One Hater. He does a lot of the left wing debates on the Crucible.
I saw that. I was one of my debates. I saw him. Yeah.
He says at conception, there is potential for help in 9 months. In the Homestead example, let's say we add in that help will arrive only in 9 months after birth. Can she kill her child during that time?
I thought that was the whole point of the debate, right? Does she have the right to do that?
That's what I was saying is that the potential for help just means that there's help coming after some span of time and some set of events occurs. But that
she has the right
span of time and that set of events is arbitrary. That's what that.
Yeah, and with I understand that, and she has the right not to wait. So it sucks.
Okay. Hang on a second, guys. We want to make sure that we're still streaming here. It looked like there was are we? Yeah, I don't know. Something happened. There was some kind of connection issue. Maybe it's just on my end. I don't know. And then the last one comes in, $5 from Justin. Sends in no message at all. Appreciate it. By the way, we're at where were we at? We were our goal was 200. We broke the goal, 272. So I greedily set it up way higher just to see how much I could extort from chat. And I feel like we did pretty good tonight. So I appreciate it very much, everybody. Real quick before everybody goes, I do want to get those channel shout outs. So let's start with Nikki, Beat the Cult. Go ahead. Shout out whatever you want. It's you got the floor.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks again, Andrew and Zen, for having me. You guys can find me on YouTube at Beat the Cult. I do post at least weekly, either a podcast, and I'm starting to do like YouTube watch nights. And I'll probably do one of those this week, and also Twitter. And as I progress with my account on Instagram and TikTok, I'll post those as well. But mostly you can find me on Twitter and YouTube at Beat the Cult.
And then Zen Shapiro.
Yep, Zen Shapiro. You can find me at all the usual stuff, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. And right here at the Crucible, often as the host. Yeah, I enjoyed.
Oh, wait. One last minute super chat came in, right? And that takes precedent over anything you had to say, Zen. It's from Snoop, who says, Nikki, after the clump of cells is removed from the woman, is she allowed to eat it? Oh, God.
I was going to ask you that, but it's a fair question. What do you think?
Allowed to eat it?
Yeah.
Does she have a right to?
If she wants to. It's kind of weird, but
Ugh.
I mean, people have their weirdness, and I'm assuming he does too. That's kind of weird. I wouldn't advise it. It's cannibalism, but
go ahead, Zen.
To finish my closing. I enjoyed the debate. I do appreciate you coming on, Nikki.
Sure.
I did have a lot of fun tonight. It was nice to get back in the debate seat, like I said. I implore everyone in chat. We appreciate your support, but I need to echo that we are in a tough spot as a channel right now. So please keep the support coming through Dono Chat and memberships over at Rumble, things like that, because we're really under the gun at YouTube. We're getting false flagged and struck down for shit we didn't even do. So please help us sustain the channel because it's literally in jeopardy right now. So we're going to need all the help we can get. So
guys, support them. These are good guys. They're excellent. So please support them.
Well, I mean, I am. Zen's a fucking piece of shit. But I'm great, right? I'm great. But anyway, from all of us here at the Crucible to all of you out there in Crucible Land, have a wonderful night.